Oh,
I was like ready to go out the door and got that email. It's like, I'm canceling.
Oh.
I edit your paper and send it back to you tomorrow if you want. I'm like, no.
That's ridiculous.
No, thank you. See,
I think we'll see how this.
You have a YouTube video out there that, like, if you're going to expose somebody to your lectures, like you got one you would send people to.
Put them in. I mean, I think there's one in there about why Christians should read the pagan classics. It's probably pretty good.
Is that the one to the Korean church?
Yeah, that's from the Korean church. That because I talk about that a lot. That might be a good one. Oh, what about Paula? I hope she comes. I hope she's not been feeling ill. Is she okay? She might come. We'll see. All right, folks. I tell you, this is good stuff. That one, there's a lot of stuff up there. I like the. Oh my Lord, are we ready to dive in here? You know, I tell you, it's just, you know, we're almost at the destruction of the ring, but then we got another 80 pages, and you know, it's funny. You know, the movie obviously cuts a lot of that stuff out, but it gives you the same mood. You know, that same kind of joy and sadness, and you know, like. You know, I always prepare for this class by, over the weekend, I'm reading everything closely, taking notes and stuff, and then usually, like, the night before, I'll go over it again and look at all my points I want. And I just ended up reading the whole thing again. It's just so beautiful. There you go, and moving. There we go. Amigo 1, or are you Amigo 1, 2, or 3?
Which was the two?
The Musketeers, I like that. All for one and one for all.
Always one. Porthos.
Porthos. Happy one. Aramis is the one that's more like thoughtful and all.
This is the big guy.
They're pretty big. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. What movie is it very important to know the names of the three Musketeers? The very end of the movie. It's like the climax of the movie. Have any of you ever seen Slumdog Millionaire?
Oh.
Who wants to be a millionaire? That's the final question, I think. What are the names of the three Musketeers? You remember? It's good stuff. All right. This is going. Okay, we haven't even done anything yet. Hello. Just want to get rid of this mask. I'm so ready to be done with it. Okay. Why don't we pick up exactly where we left off on page 908? And 909 is when we saw that the music that brings them together, right? And here we are. We are at journey's end, are we not? As we're moving. It's really top of 909. Though here at journey's end I lie, in darkness buried deep. Maybe most of the MFAs are feeling that way, about to graduate. Okay, here at the end, right? I will not say the day is none, nor bid the stars farewell. And then we said before, it is the music that brings Sam and Frodo together. And when he comes up, there's sort of like a trapdoor, and he comes up there to rescue Frodo. Frodo wakes up on the top of page 910, and again, am I still dreaming? You know. What is this? He said, I'd almost given up hope, about a third of the way down. I hardly can believe it, said Frodo. There was an orc with a whip, and then it turns into Sam. Then I wasn't dreaming after all when I heard that singing down below and tried to answer. Was it you? It was indeed, Mr. Frodo. I'd given up hope almost. I couldn't find you. Well, you have now, Sam. Dear Sam, said Frodo. You know, even Sam almost gave up hope, but not fully. And again, it is the music that draws them together. And he tells them, I heard your singing, and that's what brought us together. Right? But notice that notice that there's still danger, right? So on the bottom of page 911, they're talking about the ring, right? And he thinks everything's done, right? The ring is gone. He doesn't know yet that Sam has saved the ring, right? And on the bottom of page 911, he says, 911, he says, you've got it, gasped Frodo. You've got it here. Sam, you're a marvel. Then, quickly and strangely, his tone changed. Give it to me! Give it to me at once! You can't have it! Right? And then on the top of, on the very bottom of the page, no, cried Frodo, snatching the ring. No, you won't. You thief! You thief! And suddenly he sounds like who?
Smeagol, right?
Yeah, Smeagol, right? Like Gollum or Smeagol. You thief! I mean, again, we see the darkness, and the movie does this really well, where one moment he's like, oh, Sam, thank you, and the next moment, it's like, ah! And he's ready to attack him and take it back, because the ring has such horrible power over him, right? It keeps sucking him into the dark side. And the movie does a pretty good job. I mean, in the sense that Elijah Wood, Looks darker and darker as we're moving along, and his eyes, and it's like, man, poor guy looks like he's dead by the end. Anyway, okay, let's turn to page 914. I'm going to just try to pull out little passages because there's so much to do and it's so great. But we'll cover as much as we can. They're like, well, how are we going to live in Mordor, right? If all the water's poisoned, then how can we live? We'll die. But all the water can't be completely poisoned. Why? There must be some drinkable water in Mordor. Why? Well, the animals and even more. I mean, it's full of, orcs and sometimes the dark men and stuff like that, but it's full of orcs where they need to drink, right? And there's just something here that Frodo says that, again, gets to this idea of the true nature of evil, right? Remember, evil is a parasite. It's a negative. It's a privation. Evil cannot do what? It can only do what? What is evil incapable of doing? It's incapable of being good, right? And it can't create anything. It can only do what? It can only corrupt and destroy, right? But it can't make something completely in its image, right? It can only destroy. This is important because on the top of page 914, he explains, these orcs must eat something, or do they live on foul air and poison? No, they eat and drink, said Sam. The shadow that bred them can only mock. It cannot make. Okay? And mock, of course, doesn't mean make fun of like we say, but imitate. But imitate like a parrot mocks your voice, right? Although they're actually pretty good at it. But mock in the sense of imitating, but poorly. They can only mock. It cannot make. Not real new things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined them and twisted them. And of course, Saruman was the best at twisting them and making the Uruk-hai. But again, even he can't create life. He can only twist it. Foul waters and foul meats they'll take if they can get no better, but not poison. They fed me, and so I'm better off than you. There must be food and water somewhere in this place. Again, it'll be foul, it'll be nasty, but again, the orcs still are alive. They have to have something. They can't actually live on poison, even though they can live on nasty stuff and whatnot. Like the people in Hawaii living on Spam or something like that, okay? But still, it's got to be some kind of meat, whatever that meat is, I'm not sure. Right? Okay, and then he holds up the star glass again, goes past those two watchers again, all that's skipped in the movie, saying the name of Elbereth, okay, that's the Varda, the real queen of heaven, something like that. And then they move on, deeper and deeper into the land of shadow. And then there's something really neat that happens. As they're moving deeper into Mordor, Sam actually says a prayer. Prays to the lady, ultimately to Elbereth. I mean, Galadriel and Elbereth, they're sort of linked together. And he just prays for two things. If only you can give us a little bit of sun, light, and a little bit of water, fresh water. Right? Maybe we can survive. So he's literally, parched and praying for anything. And on the next page, on page 919 and 920, the prayer is actually answered. Right? We don't see a flash of lightning or anything like that, but the prayer is answered. Right? Just like, what group of Jews prayed for water in a waterless place? Yeah, the children of Israel when they were going through what? Good. During after they left Egypt, they're going through the Sinai, going through the desert, right? God, and where does God send them water from? From the rock. Okay, so we'll get that. They don't need light. They get probably more light than they need in the desert. Okay, but here, so first on page 919, first they get the light in kind of an interesting way. About the second paragraph. Look at it, Mr. Frodo. Look at it. The wind has changed. Something's happening. He's not having it all his own way. His darkness is breaking up out in the world there. I wish I could see what is going on. Do you know what's going on? What caused the darkness to break? Who was killed? Who did Ellie kill? The Witch King, okay? So the Witch King was killed, and already the Lord of the Ring race says, and again, we're starting to get a little bit more crossover, flashes back and forth. But then, on the next page, bottom of 920, we'll see it. It's not just water, but it's almost literally water out of the rock. So it says towards the bottom, they saw water trickling out of a gully on the left, so sharp and narrow that it looked as if the black cliff had been cloven by some huge axe. Water came dripping down, the last remains maybe of some sweet rain gathered from sunlit seas, but ill-fated to fall at last upon the walls of the black land and wander fruitless down into the dust. You almost get like a little biography of this precious water going down into the darkness. This is pretty amazing stuff. Here it came out of the rock in a little falling streamlet and flowed across the path, and turning south ran away swiftly to be lost among the dead stones. Sam sprang towards it. If ever I see the lady again, and again he's thinking of Galadriel, I will tell her, light and now water. Let me drink first, Mr. Frodo. All right. I want to make sure it's not poisonous, but it's not. So again, they are sustained in the wilderness, like the Jews wandering for 40 years. And of course, what did God send? Water from the rock. What were the three things God sent? Good, the manna from the heaven and say again? And the ducks, right, the quail, whatever they are, that he sent over there. And it says somewhere that you wandered in the wilderness for 40 years and your shoes never gave out. So we watched over their leather shoes or whatever. That's pretty cool. There's one line about that. But again, these are things. And one more thing. You see, sometimes God sends these things not just for us to live physically, but to give us hope. Because, hope is almost as important as health. Because if you lose your hope, you just sort of give up, right? And you're just there and moving. So even at the darkest part, as they're getting closer and closer to Mount Doom, they're given things that help sustain their body, but also sustain their hope. And one of the most beautiful is on page 922, when the sort of clouds part for a moment and Sam catches a glimpse of something. Let's see if we can figure out what it is. This is towards the top, that big paragraph. Frodo sighed and was asleep almost before the words were spoken. Sam struggled with his own weariness, and he took Frodo's hand, and there he sat silent till deep night fell. Then at last, to keep himself awake, he crawled from the hiding place and looked out. The land seemed full of creaking and cracking and sly noises, but there was no sound of voice or of foot. Far above the Ephel-Duath in the west, the night sky was still dim and pale. There, peeping among the cloud rack, above a dark tor, it's kind of a mountain, above a dark tor high up in the mountains, Sam saw a white star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart. I love that. A little bit of King James English there. The beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. His song in the tower, that's what we started with today, his song in the tower had been defiance rather than hope. For then he was thinking of himself. Now for a moment, his own fate and even his master's ceased to trouble him. He crawled back into the brambles and laid himself by Frodo's side, and putting away all fear, he cast himself into a deep, untroubled sleep. Can anybody guess what the white star is that he's seen? Yeah, it's the ship. It's the starboat that Eärendil sails that has the what in it? Yeah, that last Silmaril is in there, right? And remember, we've said a few times that one time while Eärendil's star, which seems to be, because the evening star and the morning star are the same star. Venus and Hesper are the same star. It seems to be that star. He seems to suggest as that star goes over, one day some of the light fell into what? Into Galadriel's mirror. She collected it and put it in. That's the star glass that she gave to Frodo, and Sam has it now. Right? And earlier on, you might remember when he's talking about the stories that really matter. It's like, this file we got from Galadriel, it has the light and the Silmaril. We're in the same story. Don't the great stories never end? Right? That sort of stuff. So he's got a sense of hope. And I don't know if anybody noticed, but just one line out of this thing I read here was borrowed for the movie. They just grabbed a hold of one little phrase. But it's one of the most memorable. It's that phrase, the thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. Remember, what does he say? When at the end of Two Towers, when Frodo says, I can't do this, Sam. He said, I know, this never should have happened, right? But that's the way it is in the stories that really matter. Remember, full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be good when so much bad had happened? And yet, in the end, the shadow is only a passing thing. Right? Even darkness will end. So just that one line pulled out of there. Like I said, that speech is kind of put together from different bits and pieces of the novel. But again, that it will, in the end, the shadow will fail. There is hope at the end. Sometimes we can't fully see the hope, right? Like the patriarchs in the Old Testament, Abraham and all, that were building a city that they couldn't see, right? A city whose builder was not human hands, and yet they waited and they trusted and were participating. Because remember, we're part of the same story that starts with Abraham. We're part of that same story. And I know there must have been one biblical patriarch that came to Texas because it's God's country. Maybe. We'll figure that out. Of course, you do know that there are a group of people who believe that America was populated by a lost tribe of Israel. You know what they're called? Yeah, those are the Mormons. They believe that a lost tribe of Israel crossed over and became all the Indians. It's really wild. That's actually at the core of Mormon theology. It's pretty wild stuff. Anyway, so all the Indians are Jews. You didn't know that. It's pretty wild. Anyway, okay, so we move on. Oh God, there's such good stuff here. Okay, move on. Oh my gosh, the shriekers. By the way, did you notice that in some ways the orcs are less scary in the book than they are in the movie? Mostly because they talk a lot more in the book, right? Which makes them less scary. I mean, there's some talking in there, but they like I said, there are times when they're frightening. There are other times when they seem like the stupid thugs that are on the side of the bad guy in like a kid's movie, like in the old Batman or something. They're so dumb. They're like, Shrieker number 1 got knocked down. All laughing and stuff like that. They're kind of idiots. But anyway, but let's keep moving on. Let's get to Mount Doom. Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Let's get to Mount Doom. Okay, page 934. Page 934. Talked about hope a lot. Here is where it kind of all leads up to. And this is where Tolkien's making, I think, a rather deep sort of theological statement. Again, basically Sam is suddenly realizing that, maybe this is not going to be a there and back again story. Where did he get that phrase from? There and back again. Yeah, Bilbo. That's the subtitle to The Hobbit. There and back again. Maybe this is not going to be a there and back again story. There may be no returning. And a little bit later, when he actually throws away his pots and pans, it's like the hardest thing he has to endure. Right? But look what happens here. Okay, he's almost ready to give up, and then this is 934, the second paragraph. But even as hope died in Sam, or seemed to die, it was turned to a new strength. Sam's plain hobbit face grew stern, almost grim, as the will hardened in him, and he felt through all his limbs a thrill, as if he was turning into some creature of stone and steel that neither despair nor weariness nor endless barren miles could subdue. Wow. What is the difference from a Christian point of view between happiness and joy? Oh, wait, very well put. Good. It's very, very deep. Right? It doesn't move and change, right? Another way to put that, what is the difference between peace and the shalom peace that Christ gives? Is something similar there? Good. I like, because you almost use, it's deeper and higher, which is almost the same thing sometimes. It's deeper and higher than just regular old hope. So you might remember Jesus said, peace I leave to you, not as the world gives, but my peace I give to you. And that's the peace that surpasses all understanding. So wow. You try to catch that in your sculptures, I think? Yeah. I think so. Like a hope that, again, the greater continuum. The hope. what is it? Something hope is the thing with feathers. That's what's her name? What's the poet? Emily Dickinson. Something there's a poem which said, "Hope is the thing with feathers." You heard that one? I've heard that. So, anyway, good. But again, we need that hope. We are continuing on in hope. Can Chris continue on without the noble class?
I have no choice.
You have no choice. You must carry on. You must pass down the wisdom. You are the link.
I have thoughts of Clinton.
You have thought.
Into my brain.
That could be good. It could drive you insane. I don't know which. That's pretty good.
So give me peace,
Peace.
not the world's peace.
There we go. Oh man, that's great.
Is he here?
Yeah, he's behind you.
Oh, he's quiet.
Oh, he's quiet. That's true. You probably didn't notice he came in. Yeah. That is kind of scary when he's quiet. But notice also we find out that at this point in the journey, all they have left to eat is the rest of the limbus, the whey bread. But it turns out that it has a special potency. When you only rely on that, it's stronger. Right? It's like only relying on prayer or something like that, or in this case, the Eucharist almost. So again, there's a lot of wonderful things like that. Okay, as we move on, look at page 937, the very, very bottom. Look what happens to Frodo. And again, the movie does a pretty good job trying to show this in, Elijah Wood's face and his eyes as he's getting drawn more and more. He says here, do you remember that bit of rabbit, Mr. Frodo? Right, the little time we had? In the very bottom of 937, he says, "No, I'm afraid not, Sam. At least I know that such things happened, but I cannot see them. No taste of food, no feel of water, no sound of wind, no memory of tree or grass or flower, no image of moon or star are left to me. I am naked in the dark, Sam, and there is no veil between me and the wheel of fire. I begin to see it even with my waking eyes, and all else fails." The ring has robbed him of all joy, all color, all smell, all taste, all of it. Do any of you all back there remember a Chronicle of Narnia where they're in a place where it is just sort of, colorless and lightless and soundless and joyless, and they feel like they've been there forever, on and on, rowing in the darkness? You remember? It's like being in an anthill.
No, it's on a boat.
Oh, they're on a boat, yeah. Remember? Good, when they go underground, it's in the silver chair. And it said, the boat makes you think of Voyage of the Dawn Treader, but remember there's that underground ocean or sea, and then it's on and on. There's nothing. It's a sort of dead world, a world with no difference, a gray world. Again, and both Lewis and Tolkien saw the sort of horror of the anthill or the beehive or everything. And later on, by the way, we're going to get an image of an anthill in a moment. We'll see if you recognize it when we get there. Okay, and again, the pans get thrown over, right? And then, page 940, like we said, one of the great moments in the film, you just re-experience it. It's the very bottom of page 940, and again, Frodo won't let him help, but he says to him, "Come, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you and it as well. So up you get. Come on, Mr. Frodo, dear. Sam will give you a ride. Just tell him where to go, and he'll go." And again, the movie and the music, all of that. And he is becoming, I told you, Christopher means the Christ bearer. He's literally bearing the ring, oh my God. And now watch this, so it's interesting, because he picks him up, but then he's bearing the ring bearer, I guess what I'm trying to say. But then look what Tolkien tells us. As Frodo clung upon his back, arms loosely about his neck, legs clasped firmly under his arms, Sam staggered to his feet, and then to his amazement, he felt the burden light. He had feared that he would have barely strength to lift his master alone, and beyond that he had expected to share in the dreadful dragging weight of the accursed ring. But it was not so. Whether because Frodo was so worn by his long pains, wound of knife, and venomous sting, and sorrow, fear, and homeless wandering, or because some gift of final strength was given to him, Sam lifted Frodo with no more difficulty than if he were carrying a hobbit child piggyback in some romp on the lawns or hayfields of the Shire. He took a deep breath and started off. What do you think? Why is Frodo light? What do you think? What could be that whatever deeper spiritual message?
Life and believing him.
Oh, we were on the very, very bottom of the top of 941. Which one is it? What's he doing? You saying?
He's becoming like this. Soul or whatever. Starting to, losing everything.
Good. So Frodo is he's gone like there's nothing there, right? I think of when Gwahir carries Gandalf after he's died. Basically, he says, "You're so light, the wind could blow you away," right? And here, and then Sam is doing this, super, charitable thing, whatever, and suddenly it's the burden is lightened or something as he tries to do it. I know it's wonderful. You ever heard that beautiful phrase about friends, that when you have a really good friend, it multiplies your joys, but cuts your sorrows in half. You heard that, right? Because you're sort of both bearing it. It cuts it in half. But when you're happy, it's like a double happiness when you're with someone that you love. Anyway, that's kind of cool. Wow. And then talk about providence. It just so happens, and you kind of see that. It's like, how are we going to get into the volcano? But it just so happens that they cut like a road into the center. And, you can see it in the movie. And it seemed at one time it was a road to link up the Dark Tower, Barad-dûr, with the Mount Doom, Orodruin. But if it wasn't for that, what were we going to do? They're going to climb up the mountain. They don't even know. It's just providentially there it is. It's kind of like finding the place in the mountain where they put the key in The Hobbit, where they get into the Smaug's lair, to where the dragon is. But anyway, it's just one of the many providential things. So it's like, come on, get in there now. And they realize the time is right because they can sense that Sauron is distracted, because at this moment, what's happening in another part of Middle-earth? Good, the great battle at where? Where the battle is? And they've got the teeth. Remember the teeth, right? The Black Gate at the teeth of Mordor, and it's charging right now. So everything is turned just exactly. And I skipped over, but one of the ways they get there is they actually join with an orc army. They really develop that more in the movie. They join with an orc army, but then the orcs turn and they're all heading to the Black Gate. And it's exactly what again does. We have to empty out Mordor to give them that chance. And so in they go. On page 943, we come down. And remember, we haven't seen Gollum in a while, right? Ever since Shelob, Gollum has been gone for a couple of weeks now. And Gollum sees that he's going there to destroy it, and he says about half of the way down 943, Wicked master, cheats us, cheats Smeagol, Gollum. He mustn't go that way, he mustn't hurt Precious. Give it to Smeagol, yes, give it to us. With a violent heave, Sam rose up. At once he drew his sword, but he could do nothing. Gollum and Frodo were locked together. Gollum was tearing at his master, trying to get at the chain and the ring. This was probably the only thing that could have roused the dying embers of Frodo's heart and will. An attempt to wrest his treasure from him by force. He fought back with a sudden fury that amazed Sam, and Gollum also. Even so, things might have gone far otherwise if Gollum himself had remained unchanged. But whatever dreadful paths, lonely and hungry and waterless, he had trodden, driven by a devouring desire and a terrible fear, they had left grievous marks on him. He was a lean, starved, haggard thing, all bones and tight-drawn, sallow skin. A wild light flamed in his eyes, but his malice was no longer matched by his old gripping strength. Right? He himself is getting all messed up and all gone. Right? Down, said, this is Frodo speaking. Down, you creeping thing, and out of my path. Your time is at an end. You cannot betray me or slay me now. Then suddenly, as before, under the eaves of the Emyn Will, Sam saw these two rivals with other vision. And if you remember, but when they first meet, when they first capture Gollum at the beginning of the Two Towers, whatever, I guess it was really book 4. If you remember, they grab a hold of him and they're trying to get him to swear on something, and he swears on the ring. And just for a moment, it's like Sam sees what's happening spiritually. He sees how Frodo's been magnified by the power of the ring, and there's Gollum. He's going to get a second vision, another vision of what's really happening in the heavenlies, as a lot of Christians say today. What's really happening? It says, then suddenly, as before, he saw the two rivals with other vision, a crouching shape, that of course is Gollum, scarcely more than the shadow of a living thing, a creature now wholly ruined and defeated, yet filled with a hideous lust and rage. And before it stood stern, untouchable now by pity, a figure robed in white, but at its breast it held a wheel of fire. Now, we haven't heard that before. And before it stood stern, untouchable now by pity. What does that mean? We haven't really heard that before. Frodo has become so engulfed even now by the ring that he can feel no pity for Gollum, who's about to rob him of it, right? He's holding it there, untouchable by pity. But as its breast held a wheel, out of the fire there spoke a commanding voice, as if Frodo's almost merged with the ring. And out of the ring it says, "Begone and trouble me no more. If you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fire of doom." Don't miss that curse, because that's exactly what happens. Everybody always like, well, what happened? Did Gollum commit suicide? Did he get pushed? Did he slip? Well, right here. And remember earlier, Frodo had said the same thing to him. If you do this, I will master you. I will force you to jump into the fire, is one of the things he says, right? So all of it's leading up to this. The crouching shape backed away, terror in its blinking eyes, and yet at the same time insatiable desire. Then the vision passed, and Sam saw Frodo standing, hand on breast, his breath coming in great gasps, right? And then go. And even Gollum is overpowered and he leaves. And now, all of it comes up to this, all right? Already in The Hobbit, Hobbit number 1, named Bilbo Baggins, showed pity to the pathetic and depraved Gollum and didn't kill him when he had a chance, right? That was number 1. Number 2, Frodo's already had several chances, and he still forgives and expresses pity to Gollum, right? But now, this little passage here, if it wasn't for now Sam also learning pity, even as Frodo has lost it, everything would have been gone, right? I mean, if Sam were to have killed Gollum right now, then Frodo would have taken the ring and become a new Dark Lord. Who knows what would have happened, right? So, this is page 944, after the space break. "Now," said Sam, "at last I can deal with you." Are you ready? That would be like if there was an annoying student in the class and your teacher was too nice of a guy and kept letting him off, and then the teacher leaves, and now you're like, okay, buddy, now you're dead. Now, maybe not college, but I'm thinking more like in high school or something like that. Anyway, he says, "Now I can deal with you." He leapt forward with drawn blade, ready for battle, but Gollum did not spring. He fell flat upon the ground and whimpered, "Don't kill us! Don't hurt us with nasty, cruel steel! Let us live, yes, live just a little longer. Lost, we're lost. And when precious goes, we'll die, yes, die into the dust." I mean, think about that. When the ring is destroyed, it will destroy Sauron, but it will probably destroy Gollum. His whole life is tied to the ring as well now. We didn't think about that, but it sort of kind of maybe ensures that Bilbo's going to age even faster, maybe. They never quite say that, but certainly Gollum's life is completely tied to it. Clawed up dust, and here it is. Sam's hand wavered. His mind was hot with wrath and the memory of evil. It would be just to slay this treacherous, murderous creature, just and many times deserved. And also it seemed the only safe thing to do. That's almost the exact language when in The Hobbit, Bilbo is, looking at Gollum, because Bilbo is invisible. And he's looking and he says, it would be right to kill him, put him out, right? But then he stops him. But it's almost the same language. It would be completely just to kill this miserable creature after he was trying to kill Bilbo. But he doesn't. What stays his hand? 'Twas pity stayed his hand. He himself, but deep in his heart, there was something that restrained him. He could not strike this thing lying in the dust, forlorn, ruinous, utterly wretched. He himself, though only for a little while, had borne the ring, and now dimly he guessed the agony of Gollum's shriveled mind and body, enslaved to that ring, unable to find peace or relief ever in life again. but Sam had no words to express what he felt. You see how beautiful Tolkien stays true to the character? Sam is still a simple fellow. He's not a philosopher. He doesn't have words to put into... He can't put into words this sort of sudden, deeper sense of pity and charity he's feeling, beyond just being the nice guy that he is. It's like a deeper understanding and empathy and insight into this, and he realizes, I can't kill this thing. Part of it is how miserable he is. Part of it is, there but for the grace of God go I. He held the ring long enough to understand, just in a small way, its devouring power. Oh, curse you, you stinking thing! Go away! Be off! I don't trust you, not as far as I could kick you, but be off, or I shall hurt you, yes, with nasty, cruel steel. I'll never forget, when I was an undergraduate, it was the last, it was, Colgate did this weird thing, like after final exams, all the seniors like stayed on for an extra week and just mingled and had fun. It was kind of a cool thing. But I remember that one of our professors, he was an English professor, was Terence Dupre. He had written a book called The Survivor, about Holocaust survivors. It was one of the first books, and it made him famous. And anyway, he's a pretty cool guy. And anyway, me and another English major, he wanted us to come to his house, and he went out and got us pizza. So we're driving along in his car to get pizza, and all of a sudden, there's a turtle walking very slowly across the road. And amazingly, this guy, who was somewhat gruff, he actually stopped the car. This is upstate New York, so there's no people around. He pulls the car over, and he walks over to save the turtle. But the really weird, and it always sticks in my mind, he didn't, like if it was, Amanda, she would have, picked it up and carried it over. He looked at it, and then he kind of almost ferociously kicked it to the side. And it was weird because he was saving its life. But it was almost like at the same time, he was annoyed at its stupidity or something. It always stuck in my mind. Professors, we have to be a little bit of eccentrics. But I always thought it was almost an anger. But he was saving its life. And he kicked it across the thing. So anyway, if I had a cell phone back then, I'm going to take a picture of it. But anyway, always stuck in my mind. Again, just weird. We're all a mixture of odd motivations or whatever. But it's a memory out of the past, man. That's like 30 years ago. No, that's more than 30 years ago. 35 years ago or something. Anyway. Okay, now, on page 945, every time I read it, every time I watch the movie, are you not surprised all over again when Frodo says, I will not destroy it. It is mine. It's like every time. And the best interpretation I ever read, and I can't even remember what book it is, because I'm always writing in my book, but somebody said this, that the ring is ultimately sin, right? And sin can only be defeated by grace. We can't defeat sin on our own. It can only be defeated by an intervention of grace. And that intervention of grace, oddly enough, turns out to be Gollum, coming and biting the ring off. And I thought that was one of the best explanations I've read over the years. But he can't do it. None of us could do it. It has completely consumed him. Now, it is true that some people gave it away. Bilbo gave it away and whatnot. But Frodo, the journey that he's been on, the fact that he is in Mount Doom where it was actually forged, right there, and as soon as he puts it on, the eye turns. I love the way it's, again, he said at the very bottom of 945, I have come, but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine. And then, as he put on the ring, it says, and claimed it for his own, 946, even in Samathur, the very heart of his realm, the power in Barad-dûr was shaken, and the tower trembled from its foundations to its proud and bitter crown. The Dark Lord was suddenly aware of him, and his eye, piercing all shadows, looked across the plain to the door that he had made. Now the real folly, it was Sauron himself that made it so they can get through. And the magnitude of his own... You know what? This must have been the way Satan felt on Easter Sunday. Oh, man, I really screwed up. I thought I won by killing him. I really screwed up. Right? So, and the magnitude of his own folly was revealed to him in a blinding flash, and all the devices of his enemies were at last laid bare. This is what they've been doing all along. Then his wrath blazed in consuming flame, but his fear rose like a vast black smoke to choke him, for he knew his deadly peril and the thread upon which his doom now hung. From all his policies and webs of fear and treachery, from all his stratagems and wars, his mind shook free. In other words, everything going on at the Black Gate. And throughout his realm a tremor ran. His slaves quailed and his armies halted, and his captains suddenly steerless, bereft of will, wavered and despaired. Like taking away the queen ant or the queen bee or something like that, and everything wavers, for they were forgotten. The whole mind and purpose of the power that wielded them was now bent with overwhelming force upon the mountain. At his summons, wheeling with a rending cry, in a last desperate race there flew, faster than the winds, the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, and with a storm of wings they hurtled southwards to Mount Doom. Right? Then he jumps on him, right? Frodo gave a cry, and there he was, fallen upon his knees at the chasm's edge, right? So again, you see the fight back and forth, and then, because of course Gollum has bitten the ring off of his finger, and actually bitten his whole finger off, and he's got the ring, and we see him, but Gollum, dancing a mad thing, held aloft the ring, a finger still thrust within its circle. It shone now as if verily it was wrought of living fire. Precious, precious, precious! And with that, even as his eyes were lifted up to gloat on his prize, he stepped too far, toppled, wavered for a moment on the brink, and then with a shriek he fell. Out of the depths came his last wail. Precious! And he was gone. Every time it happens, it's just amazing. Right? This is what Tolkien called, is that word before? The you. You can only survive this year. Okay. The you catastrophe. Right? The good catastrophe. Right? At the very, everything seems down and dark, and then boom. Right? So as Tolkien said, the you catastrophe of the fall was the incarnation. The you catastrophe of the crucifixion was the resurrection. Right? That sudden turn. Never going to happen again. Right? Out of the very bitter depths comes this grace out of nowhere. And Tolkien felt that all the greatest fairy tales played on that sudden moment of grace at the very end. Remember when you were a kid watching Beauty and the Beast for the first time, the cartoon? Right? Just as we think the beast is going to die, and then all of a sudden, ooh, ooh, and he turns into of course, that's what they make fun of in Shrek, when the same thing happens, and then she becomes an ogre. Come on, man. But again, that sudden turn, that hopefulness out of absolute despair. That's just amazing. Right? Wow. And then what happens to basically all of Mordor after Sauron dies? And the movie does this really well. It just all collapses, right? One by one, the tower, the movie does a great job when you see the tower coming down, the eye, whoosh, and then, everything's opening up and swallowing the orcs and stuff. But that's the bad guy, right? The bad guy takes everybody with him. Right? Okay, is there a villain in the Chronicles of Narnia? That when the villain dies, everything collapses. Remember? Oh, I think you got it. No, it's not the White Witch. It's the Green Witch, the Emerald Witch. It's the silver chair. The lady that I look at every morning when I get up. This guy, she's coming to get me. That was your painting. I've got it right there in the house. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You saw it. Remember I showed you what he did? It was amazing. She still keeps trying to tempt me, but she hasn't succeeded. She hasn't succeeded. Well, maybe Treebeard will help now. I'll set Treebeard against her so he can hold her back or something. Yeah. But it is the silver. If you remember, and actually C.S. Lewis says something like, she's one of those people that wouldn't mind so much dying if she took everybody with her. And again, it's that same anthill. It's the silver chair. That everything, if we ever get a movie of that, well, there's a BBC movie, but if we ever get a big movie of Silver Chair, it'd be kind of neat. But everything collapses around them. And on page 947, we've got that great moment where that great line at the very end. Wait a minute. It says, just bottom of 947. Your poor hand, said Sam. Sam, I have nothing to bind it with or comfort it. I would have spared him a whole hand of mine rather, but he's gone now, beyond recall, gone forever. Yes, said Frodo. But do you remember Gandalf's words? Oh, even Gollum may have something yet to do. But for him, if it wasn't for him, Sam, Gollum, I could not have destroyed the ring. The quest would have been in vain, even at the bitter end. So let us forgive him. A wonderful moment, an ending. Let us forgive him. For the quest is achieved, and now all is over. I am glad you are here with me, here at the end of all things, Sam. You are all with me at the end of all things. Well, except we're going to get some darn good artwork next week. I can't wait to see it. Right? Okay, then we like literally step back just like a few minutes. We go to the next page, and it's the Battle of Pelennor Fields, right? And we step back just a second because we see the moment when the eagles come, and then the Nazgul rush off, right? And then all of a sudden everything falls apart, right? Because it's only a few minutes. I mean, from when Frodo puts on the ring to when it's destroyed, it's maybe just a couple minutes, right? But it's neat. It steps back, and again, they this is page 948. What is it? Fourth paragraph. It says, "But the Nazgul turned and fled and vanished into Mordor's shadows, hearing a sudden terrible call out of the Dark Tower. And even at that moment, all the hosts of Mordor trembled, doubts clutched their hearts, their laughter failed, their hands shook, and their limbs were loosed. The power that drove them on and filled them with hate and fury was wavering. Its will was removed from them, and now looking in the eyes of their enemies, they saw a deadly light and were afraid." And then on the next page, we have this really powerful metaphor of an anthill. Okay, it's on page 949, right after the second space break. "The captains bowed their heads, and when they looked up again, behold, their enemies were flying, and the power of Mordor was scattering like dust in the wind." And then the metaphor is, "As when the death smites the swollen, brooding thing that inhabits their crawling hill and holds them all in sway, ants will wander witless and purposeless and then feebly die. So the creatures of Sauron, orc or troll or beast spell enslaved, ran hither and thither mindless, and some slew themselves or cast themselves in pits or fled wailing back to hide in holes and dark, lightless places far from hope." Oh, what a way. Have you ever seen the queen ant? To call it a swollen, brooding thing. I mean, it is also something that breathes, right? But, and really, did you all see Aliens? Alien, and Aliens is the second one. Alien was made by Ridley Scott, very dark film noir, and then Aliens is made by James Cameron. It's really huge. And you do know the whole reason why he made that movie. He only made that movie so that, what's the actress's name? Sigourney Weaver could get in her big outfit and say, what did he say? Yeah, get away from her, you bitch. That's the whole reason I said, because, she is. I mean, ultimately, the head alien is like the queen ant or the queen bee, in this case, the queen ant, right? And it is. It's like, hideous, swollen, and big and stuff like that. And it does. It almost like has some kind of telepathy. Any of you ever read The Once and Future King by T.H. White? That's the one I mentioned that it was actually turned into two things. It was turned into The Sword and the Stone by Disney. That's the first part. And the rest of it was turned into Camelot, the musical. But one of the ways Merlin teaches Arthur, Wart as he calls him, is by turning him into different animals. And he turns him into an ant to understand that the anthill is a sort of totalitarian state. Because when that book came out in the 40s or something, when there was totalitarianism everywhere. But here again, they're mindless, pushed on by this swollen, evil mind. And as soon as that mind is snapped, they just all wander around and go crazy. Right? And that's the whole technology they use, like for fire ants. You're supposed to put that gravel down, because apparently the ants will take it to the queen, and it will kill the queen, and then the whole anthill gets destroyed. Right? It's all abandoned or whatever. Evil. Yeah. Anyway, watch it. Oh my gosh. And then the eagle will carry Gandalf for the third time. What was the first time the eagle carried Gandalf? Hey, you got it. He was on top of the Tower of Anor, and he escaped. Right? It's a little more dramatic in the movie because he looks like he's going to throw himself off, and then the eagle comes. Right? The second time was when? And then the second time when the eagle carried Gandalf? It's a good trivia question. Well, he saved him. Remember?
What was the second time?
Do you know what the second time was? Anybody know what the second time was?
No, he was fighting Sauron.
Well, that's Sauron. Well, that's the first time, when he saves him from the top of Orthanc. But the second time the eagle saves him is when he was fighting the Balrog. And he slew the Balrog, but he pretty much was dead on the mountain. And then the eagle picked him up and carried him to, anybody remember? That's the top question. He carries him to Lothlorien, to Galadriel, and that's where he's healed. And that's the one I mentioned before when I said, I hope I'm not too heavy for you. He said, you're so light you could blow away. Don't let me blow away, Gandalf says. And he takes him. And then this is the third time. So third time's the charm. And he will, third time pays all, is how he says it here. And he will take him off away to there. Oh my gosh. And then they come and look at page 951. If you ever feel down and bad, just read this wonderful moment. They're all back together. Now, in the movie, they wake up and everybody's back at Minas Tirith. But here, it's going to take them a while to get to Minas Tirith. But anyway, toward almost the last paragraph on 930, it says, Gandalf shows up. And remember, who thinks Gandalf is still dead? Yeah, Sam and Frodo I'm sorry, page 951. I said something wrong. 951. Sam and Frodo don't know that Gandalf's alive. Because last time they saw him, he fell into the pit. And so it says, Gandalf is there, and he says, well, Master Samwise, how do you feel? But Sam lay back and stared with open mouth, and for a moment, between bewilderment and great joy, he could not answer. At last he gasped, Gandalf, I thought you were dead. But then I thought I was dead myself. Is everything sad going to come untrue? I love that. I say that to myself hopefully sometimes. Is everything sad going to come untrue? What's happened to the world? That's a big question. A great shadow has departed, said Gandalf, and there he laughed, and the sound was like music, or like water in a parched land. And as he listened, the thought came to Sam that he had not heard laughter, the pure sound of merriment, for days upon days without count. It fell upon his ears like the echo of all the joys he had ever known. But he himself burst into tears. Then, as a sweet rain will pass down a wind of spring, and the sun will shine out the clearer, his tears ceased, and his laughter welled up, and laughing, he sprang up from the bed. Wonderful. By the way, there's the other part, and it says, and the sun will shine out the clearer, right? What does he say? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness will end. The sun, what does he say? A new day will dawn, and when the sun shines, it will shine the clearer. Those are the stories that stayed with you, even if you were too young to understand why. Remember, just that one line. The sun shines the clearer. And it just, that whole scene is just, lightened up by that wonderful. It's not just that the sun will rise again, but when it rises again, it will shine even clearer, right? With clarity, with joy, with warmth. Just wonderful. This language is so beautiful. And that's when he says, a little bit farther down, in Gondor, the new year will always now begin upon the 25th of March, when Sauron fell and when you were brought out of the fire to the king, right? March 25th, Annunciation Day. But I think you mentioned this too, that it probably also Crucifixion Day. The same. So just amazing stuff. And then what is restored to Sam is the Galadriel, the glass, the star glass, and Galadriel's box. Does anybody remember what's in Galadriel's box? Yeah. So there's all that precious dirt from soil from Lothlorien, but what's in the middle of the soil? What else is in there? And if you got to the end, if you get right to the end, it's a seed. Yeah. So I mean, here, the light and the seed are those not two of the most common metaphors for the Messiah? The messianic hope, the light of the world, and the seed, right? Abraham, not Abraham's seeds, but Abraham's seed, says Paul. Really reading carefully the prophecy, right? And the seed, singular of Abraham, that seed being Christ, right? So the seed and the light. Okay. Man. Look at page 954. This is just some of the best writing. I mean, man. Sam, again, bursting into tears like he did almost the first time we met him, when he said, it's the end of the first chapter, me, I'm going to go to see the elves, yay! And then he wept. This is how it is, right? Well, here again, he weeps because as he listens, what do people start singing? You see this on page 954? They start singing the story. It says, lo, lords and knights and men of valor unashamed, kings and princes and fair people of Gondor, and riders of Rohan, and ye sons of Elrond, and Dunedain of the north, and elf and dwarf, and great hearts of the Shire, and all free folk of the west. Now listen to my lay, it's a song, for I will sing to you of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom. That's what Sam asked Frodo when they were he's like, they're done, but maybe someday they'll sing about it. And there they are, they're singing about it. They're already a song. And when Sam heard that, he laughed aloud for sheer delight. And he stood up and cried, oh, great glory and splendor, and all my wishes have come true. And then he wept. Do you see how humble he is? Nobody is singing the song of Nine-Finger Frodo and Samwise the Brave, right? I mean, and again, just the love of Frodo, the love of all this. And then this just priceless paragraph. And all the host laughed and wept, and in the midst of their merriment and tears, the clear voice of the minstrel rose like silver and gold, and all men were hushed. And he sang to them, now in the elven tongue, now in the speech of the West, until their hearts, wounded with sweet words, overflowed, and their joy was like swords, and they passed in thought out to regions where pain and delight flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. Oh man. You know, I was having a long talk with Bolston, as I'm always doing. God keeps me up late. Okay. I wonder if any of you have heard this word. I know some of you know Spanish, but you still might not know this word. This is a specifically Spain word. I don't know if they even use this word in Mexico. Has anybody ever heard this word? Duende. Have you ever heard that word? Yeah, I don't think it's used in Latin America. It's specifically Spanish, and it's tied to the bullfight. Duende is a kind of joy, but it's a joy tied to pain. And as Bolson was saying, it's like, there's nothing more stupid than doing a bullfight, right? I mean, you're not winning, you're not getting anything out of a bullfight, and you're putting yourself in real danger. But it's that closeness of death, but not exactly fatalism. It's a little bit like Theoden, that fatalism, but it looks at death and it sort of overcomes death, and it's all together. Like I said, I hadn't heard this word before, so you might look that up and see. Duende. And Lorca uses it, who's a poet I love, but I didn't realize that. But anyway. Could be an interesting thing to write about. Okay. What did I just do? Oh, my book went back. Okay. Let's go to... Oh, there's so much we can do. It's so wonderful. Sorry, my book closed on me. Okay. Wait a minute. Oh, my gosh. Let's see. My book is not behaving. Let's see. Sorry. There it is. Okay, 1 second. Lots of beautiful things, but we will keep going. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I think I'm going to keep... let's see. Let's go to page 9... Let's go to page 959. Let's look at the beautiful dialogue between Faramir and Éowyn. It's so beautifully done. The movie, if you see the extended edition, we see the two together, but we don't get too much of this dialogue. But at least there's a little bit in the extended version as these two come together, right? Because remember, we're climaxing with two weddings, right? The wedding of Arwen and of Aragorn and Arwen, but also of Faramir and Éowyn. The two weddings. And to me, you might say that Aragorn and Arwen are ultimately Christ and the church. But Faramir and Éowyn are almost like a new Adam and Eve, or maybe a little bit like Tom Bombadil and Goldenberry or something like that. But again, it's very important that they come together here. And remember that this is the hope of too, right? Faramir is the ultimate heir of Gondor, and Éowyn, together with her brother Éomer, they're the seed of Rohan, right? And so we're bringing together the two in this marriage. So this marriage is important. So here, the two highest men, whatever, Gondor and Rohan, are together, and then of course, man and elf are going to come together as well in the great marriage of Christ and the church. Anyway, as they talk to each other, she wants to leave the houses of healing. She feels, remember, she doesn't like a cage. She wants to go out and let me die. Let me do a good deed. And Faramir says, hey, we have to obey the healers and stay here, right? And he speaks to her. Let me see. Actually, why don't we start on page 960, towards the top? He says, "It is too late, lady, to follow the captains, even if you have the strength. But death in battle may come to us all yet, willing or unwilling. You will be better prepared to face it in your own manner, if while there is still time you do as the healer commanded. You and I, we must endure with patience the hours of waiting." She did not answer, but as he looked at her, it seemed to him that something in her softened, as though a bitter frost were yielding at the first faint presage of spring. A tear sprang in her eye and fell down her cheek like a glistening raindrop. Her proud head drooped a little. And then he says these beautiful words to her. Look at the last paragraph. "Then, Éowyn of Rohan, I say to you that you are beautiful." I love his directness. This is not flattery. This is just directness. "In the valleys of our hills," that is in Gondor, "in the valleys of our hills there are flowers fair and bright, and maidens fairer still. But neither flower nor lady have I seen till now in Gondor so lovely and so sorrowful. It may be that only a few days are left ere darkness falls upon our world, and when it comes, I hope to face it steadily. But it would ease my heart if while the sun yet shines, I could see you still. For you and I have both passed under the wings of the shadow, and the same hand drew us back." You know whose hand that is? Whose hand drew them both back? It's not God. You know who it is? Yeah, Aragorn. It was Aragorn who drew both of them back, and Mary too. But it's interesting because, of course, she still has that love for Aragorn, and Faramir perceives it all, as we'll see in a moment. But they were both brought back by the Messianic king. They were both drawn back. And again, he is so, "Alas, not me, Lord. Shadow lies on me still. Look not to me for healing. I am a shield maiden, and my hand is ungentle." No, I can't do that. But we will see her soften, and it's so beautiful. Okay, let's skip to page 962 as they continue here. This is almost the bottom of 962. "It reminds me of Numenor," said Faramir, right? "Of Numenor," said Éowyn. "Yes," said Faramir, "of the land of westerness that foundered," right? Numenor, that's where his people eventually go back to. And watch what it says. "Of the land of westerness that foundered, and of the great dark wave climbing over the great lands and above the hills and coming on, darkness unescapable. I often dream of it." Okay? That's the wave that destroyed Numenor. That's the Atlantis wave. But you might remember I told you in the first aid class who had a dream of a wave a lot. It was actually Tolkien himself. Often had a dream of an Atlantis wave, right? And he had some stories to say, once he wrote the Silmarillion down, he stopped having that dream. But it's interesting that he gave the dream to Faramir. And he said, though, almost everybody that reads this thinks that Tolkien is most like Gandalf. But he claimed he's most like Faramir, or at least that's the one he wants to be most like, is Faramir. And it's just interesting that he gives him that dream. "Then you think that the darkness is coming," said Éowyn, "darkness unescapable?" And suddenly she drew close to him. "No, it was but a picture in the mind. I do not know what is happening. The reason of my waking mind tells me that great evil has befallen, and we stand at the end of days. But my heart says nay. And all my limbs are light, and a hope and joy are come to me that no reason can deny. Éowyn, Éowyn, white lady of Rohan, in this hour I do not believe that any darkness will endure. And he stooped and kissed her brow. And so they stood on the walls of the city of Gondor, and a great wind rose and blew, and their hair, raven and golden, streamed out, mingling in the air. And the shadow departed, and the sun was unveiled, and light leapt forth, and the waters of Anduin shone like silver. And in all the houses of the city men sang for the joy that welled up in their hearts, from what source they could not tell, because it is, Sauron just fell. And before the sun had fallen far from the noon, out of the east there came a great eagle flying, and he bore tidings beyond hope from the lords of the west. Right, because they haven't come back. I don't know, is that too sentimental or beautiful? With his dark hair and her blonde hair blowing together? It's like something out of anime or something like that, man. All those Super Saiyan hair and stuff like that. Oh man, you ever tried drawing that stuff, Clinton? With the hair?
No.
The boys with all the hair? It's really weird.
You had mentioned aliens earlier.
Yeah? Oh.
And my uncle, I used to go for the summers, I would go live with my grandmother on the farm in East Texas. And I hated it because I was a city.
Oh, there you go.
I was an apartment complex kid, and you sent me out in the country, and it was just the weirdest juxtaposition of life ever. But the very first time I actually wanted a sketchbook or something to draw in constantly was after I went and saw Aliens.
Oh, really? Oh, my.
So my uncle took me to see Aliens, and it was amazing. And then that night, I asked my grandmother if I could get a sketchbook.
Oh, my gosh.
My grandmother on my dad's side is like super country old lady. And she goes,
Oh, they don't have those up here, baby, but we can go on down to the Buc-ee's. We can get you a big chief.
my first sketch pad, big chief pad.
Oh, man.
Really dark brown.
Oh, my God, that's great.
And I like the bright blue lines on it.
Oh, my gosh.
I was drawing Sigourney Weaver in
Oh, my gosh.
that mechanized suit.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
In this big chief pad in the middle of the country with no AC, And when you went to the take a shower at my grandma's house, you could see through the floorboards.
Oh my
You
gosh.
could see the dirt under the house.
Oh my
through the
gosh.
floorboards. Yes.
An artist is born. Now that is an interesting birth story.
James Cameron's Aliens.
Oh,
set
man.
me off on my sci-fi fascination.
I had a childhood obsession with that movie too.
Woo.
Single toy.
Oh,
I would take my Lego sets and really build the drop ship.
Woo.
yes.
Like I would put my things together and make the drop ship, which is weird.
It's strange. So, well, you know, that orc that you drew for your first thing looked a lot like the alien. Part of it was mixed in there.
Yeah. Yes. It's like
So, were you in love with the alien or with Sigourney Weaver? I'm not sure which.
Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, okay. So there it is.
Are you
Okay.
kidding me? Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, what was that scene when
Getting
she
in the
was
hibernation
everywhere?
chamber. Oh my god.
Oh, there we go.
She gets out
The
of
Stasis
the
pod.
Yeah, she has on underwear.
Oh, that's
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. There we go. Boy comes of age right there, man. Woo.
Oh man, I was drawing everything.
That's how you became a photorealist.
Yeah.
Ah, there we go.
I've got to get this right.
I gotta get something right.
You know, it was kind of nice after all these, movies where Sigourney Weaver is like a killer. When she was in the movie, what's the Star Trek parody? What's it called? It's really good. Galaxy Quest. Yeah, totally different role for her. It's just so funny.
Galaxy Quest is hysterical.
That really is a good movie.
Is it Galaxy Quest or Spaceballs?
No, Galaxy Quest. Well, it's funny because Galaxy Quest is like a parody of Star Trek, but it's also a parody of Star Trek fans. That's what it really is. That's funny. It's actually a good movie.
It's great. It's great. Like I said, it's underrated.
It really is underrated. And
The narration for Planet Earth is a good choice. Some people don't like it.
what was it? Was that
Planet Earth, remember?
was that a TV show?
It was like a nature.
Oh, the nature. Yeah, okay. Was that Sigourney Weaver's voice?
The American version of it.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you mean. I think I've seen parts of that. It's pretty neat. Anyway, she just doesn't seem to age either. But yeah, that is funny. Okay, now look what the eagle sings. The song that the eagle sings, bringing victory. Sing now, ye people of the Tower of Anor. Now, if you remember, the Tower of Anor is the name Minas Anor means the Tower of the Sun, which now is called Minas Tirith. But it's almost like it's going to be restored. You are now again the tower, because the Tower of the Moon has been destroyed. It's still there, it seems, but it's been defeated. Sing now, for the realm of Sauron is ended forever, and the dark tower is thrown down. This is what we call apocalyptic imagery. Sing and rejoice, ye people of the Tower of Guard. That's what Minas Tirith actually means. For your watch hath not been in vain. That was their role. And the black gate is broken, and your king hath passed through, and he is victorious. The Messianic king is coming. Sing and be glad, all ye children of the west, for your king shall come again, and he shall dwell among you all the days of your life. And the tree that was withered shall be renewed, and he shall plant it in the high places, and the city shall be blessed. Or, if you recognize this, I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautiful, dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. And he will wipe away every tear. Right? You recognize that from Revelation? That's from Revelation 21. Again, because what's really cool is that if you read Revelation really carefully, it is about the wedding feast of the Lamb. The Lamb, which is Christ, the bridegroom, will marry the bride. And the bride is the church, but the bride is also the city. The New Jerusalem that is coming out of the sky is adorned as a bride. So the bride is ultimately the church, but it's also the city in a weird way. And maybe Tolkien's picking up on this. Beautiful. Oh gosh. The days that followed were golden, and spring and summer joined and made revel together in the fields of Gondor. This is not a tragedy. It's a comedy, or more technically, it's a romance. Then on the next page, 964, we come back to finish this beautiful romance. And in some ways, there's more romance here between Faramir and Éowyn than Aragorn and Arwen. We don't see much except in the appendix. He finally says to her, about a third of the way down, or about half of the way down, 964, Éowyn, do you not love me, or will you not? I wished to be loved by another, but I desire no man's pity. That I know. And then Faramir knows all, and he speaks very plainly. You desire to have the love of the Lord Aragorn. But why? Because he was high and puissant, strong, and you wish to have renown and glory and to be lifted far above the mean things that crawl on the earth. And as a great captain may to a young soldier, he seemed to you admirable. For so he is, a lord among men, the greatest that now is. But when he gave you only understanding and pity, then you desired to have nothing, unless a brave death in battle. Look at me, Éowyn. And he just reads right to the core of her, okay? Your love for Aragorn was more almost like the love of a young soldier, because you wanted to join in that glory. And when he did not give you what you wanted, you just decided to give up on everything. Give up, right? And Éowyn looked at Faramir long and steadily. And Faramir said, do not scorn pity, that is the gift of a gentle heart, Éowyn. Don't scorn pity, but I do not offer you my pity. For you are a lady high and valiant, and have yourself won renown that shall not be forgotten by killing the Witch King. And you are a lady beautiful, I deem, beyond even the words of the elven tongue to tell. And I love you. Once I pitied your sorrow, but now were you sorrowless without fear or any lack, were you the blissful queen of Gondor, still I would love you. Éowyn, do you not love me? This is one of the great, I think this beats, taking the notepad and pushing it to the girl, writes your number down. I think this beats it.
When he's talking to her, I just hear side A.
Wonderful. And then, look at this line, okay? Then the heart of Éowyn changed, or else at last she understood it.
He lit a vanilla candle.
Wait, say it again?
He lit a vanilla candle.
Oh, let me.
Just said the movie made it up. Just me and you viewing at the dark.
For a second, I almost thought you said Bell, Book, and Campbell. Maybe Marzi has heard of that. Have you ever heard of Bell, Book, and Candle movie? Now, there's a movie called Bell, Book, and Candle. It's an old movie with Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak, where she's a witch and she falls in love with him, and at the end she becomes human, and you can tell because witches don't cry, at least in the movie. And then at the end, she finally weeps and she realizes she's mortal. You might enjoy that movie. It's not great, but it's pretty good. It says, but again, then at last, and suddenly her winter passed, and the sun shone on her. Like suddenly, she understands. I stand in Minas Anor, the Tower of the Sun, she said, and behold, the shadow has departed. I will be a shield maiden no longer, nor vie with the great riders, nor take joy only in the songs of slaying. I will be a healer, and love all things that grow and are not barren. And again she looked at Faramir. No longer do I desire to be a queen. And then Faramir laughed merrily. That is well, for I am not a king. Yet I will wed with the White Lady of Rohan, if it be her will. And if she will, then let us cross the river, and in happier days let us dwell in Dunedain. Let us dwell in fair Ithilien, and there make a garden. All things will grow with joy there, if the White Lady comes. Man, that's just a little bit different than saying, come, I'll take you away from the beautiful hills of Kentucky and take you to a city of stone and steel called Houston. Kind of flip it around, okay? But she still came, so that was pretty nice. Right? Then must I leave my own people, man of Gondor? And would you have your proud folks say of you, there goes a lord who tamed a wild shield maiden of the north. Was there no woman of the race of Numenor to choose? And he says, I would. I don't care if they say that. And he took her in his arms and kissed her under the sunlit sky. And he cared not that they stood high upon the walls in the sight of many. And many indeed saw them in the light that shone about them, as they came down from the walls and went hand in hand to the houses of healing. I love that, man! By a British writer. They are indulging in the biggest no-no in HBU. What's the biggest no-no in HBU? PD. Public displays, or PDA, public displays of affection. I was thinking motion. But PDA, public display. No, we do not do that here. Public displays of affection. I don't know, I'm joking. It used to be, not anymore. They don't let anybody go to any dorms over there. It's unbelievable. Anyway, what's that? Oh, really? In the library today? Oh, there we go. Oh, man. What is to come? Oh, my gosh, yeah. About 15 years ago, or maybe 20 years ago, we only had one cross-dresser, but he was very tasteful. He used to give, like, I'm serious, I'm not making a joke. He was just, anyway. Very strange. As much as you can say. And the girls used to come to him for makeup tips, cosmetics tips, And anyway. No, but it's pretty weird. You don't expect to see that. I don't know, it's strange.
My school back at Eastern Kentucky, the first time I read school was very, very, very good.
Yeah. All of that. Oh my gosh, very strange. Man, anyway, very strange. He was not. All I remember was like, okay, nobody knew what to do with him, but he seemed fairly harmless. Oh my gosh. So that, and so now, I don't know how we got off on that, but anyway, and then, how did we get there? I don't know. I don't know. The guy was just, like all I can tell you is that, in America, well, you still see it, but farther when I was younger, you would see these, these angry guys that had like the what do you call that thing? Mohawk. Yeah, mohawk or skinhead or something like that. But then I was in England, 30 years, 35 years ago, and I remember I would see these guys with mohawk, but they were just like big birds. They were like harmless. In fact, it still shocked me. One time I got in a bus in London, and there was one of these kids with the big mohawk, and an old man walked in the bus, and the guy got up and gave him his seat. So they were like British gentlemen mohawkers or something. I don't know. It was just really weird. Punk rockers. Oh, Clayton, I hope you weren't in love with the Spice Girls, were you? Weird looking dudes. The Spice Girls. Okay. Anyway, I just love this. We are waiting for the messianic coming of the king. Okay, Aragorn is on his way. The king is on his way. Right after the space break in 965, all things were now made ready in the city, and there was a great concourse of people. For the tidings had gone out into all parts of Gondor, from Min Rimmon even to Pinnith Galen and the far coast of the sea, and all that would come to the city made haste to come. And the city was filled again with women and fair children that returned to their homes laden with flowers. So again, all of it's alive. Pray that you are invited to the marriage feast of the Lamb. And he's coming, the king is coming. And he arrives and enters into the city, quite literally enters into the city. And then on the top of page 967, it says, very top, 967, Faramir met Aragorn in the midst of the... Oh, did you get your award? Tell us how much. How much money was it? That's what I mean. It's a pretty good award. Yeah. Congratulations. She won. I was able to get a hold of this.
Congratulations.
She got, where is it? I saw you on here. There it is. Yeah. Second place, a dress of freedom. How the flapper used fashion to take what she needed and do what she wanted. Do you own a flapper dress? Oh man, that'd be pretty cool. That's good. Did they feed you well? I would have gone to this. It's a real. I'm always a judge, and I was one of the judges. But they did it on Wednesday night. I'm like, I can't come, but I'm glad you were able to go. Good stuff. And I noticed that the top winner was Hannah Gentry, whom I know, and Emma Perry was one of them. I know her, and Maria too. Good stuff. They're good. And if I remember, the top award is like, how much was it? Yeah, $1,500. I mean, they give that pretty good money.
Marcos, what were the awards?
Oh, okay. This I don't know if grad students are allowed to or only undergrad, but it's. Was there? Okay, so maybe they can. It's either Stuart Morris, our founding father. He's the one that gave us the museums and stuff. And students have to write an essay where they go to one of our museums, and they choose an artifact. It could be one of the paintings or one of the artifacts. And they write an essay about it, do a little bit of research and stuff, and then we judge them. And I'm always a judge each year. Though I didn't see yours, I wasn't judging your category because there's a lot of different categories. But yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, they give out. They're pretty generous. So good stuff, man. Now you want to go out and buy that huge Lord of the Rings set you've been waiting to get, right? Wait, what? A set of what? Oh, really? Okay. Okay, that's more important first. I did get my son for his birthday in the fall a Lord of the Rings chess set. It's pretty well made, with figurines and stuff. It's pretty good. Yeah, you'll find it on Amazon. What's that? Oh, Risk. That sounds like a good one. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, in some ways, who knows? Risk might have been influenced by Lord of the Rings too. Kingdom Flame. Anyway, so they come in, and the very top of 967, Faramir met Aragorn in the midst of these there assembled, and he knelt and he said, "The last steward of Gondor begs leave to surrender his office." This is the thing that his father would not do. But watch what happens. And he held out a white rod, but Aragorn took the rod and gave it back, saying, "That office is not ended, and it shall be thine and thy heirs as long as my line shall last. Do now thy office." See? The very thing Denethor feared. No, I will not throw you out. You will. And basically what's going to happen is he is going to be the head of the Rangers in Ithilien. That's where Henneth Anun, the window in the west, that's where he already told Eowyn he's going to go off to. But now he will be the steward over that area. Then Faramir stood up and spoke in a clear voice. And now we've got, what everybody loves in epic fantasy, the names, the titles, right? All the titles. King of Kings, Lord of Lords, like the what is it? For unto us a child is born, and the government shall be on his, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting. That from Messiah, all the titles, right? Faramir stood, he says, Men of Gondor, hear now the steward of this realm. Behold, one has come to claim the kingship at last. Yeah, over 1,000 years. Here is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, chieftain of the Dunedain of Anor, captain of the host of the west, bearer of the star of the north, wielder of the sword reforged, victorious in battle, whose hands bring healing, the Elfstone, Elisar of the line of Elendil, Isildur's son, Elendil's son of Numenor. Shall he be king and enter into the city and dwell here? And all the hosts and all the people cried, Yea, with one voice. If it was here, we would say, Amen. Right? And he comes, and the king, anyway, he comes there, and it says, the guards step forward and comes, and they give him a crown. It was shaped like the helms of the guards of the citadel, save it was loftier, and it was all white, and the wings at either side were wrought of pearl and silver, in the likeness of a seabird, for it was the emblem of kings who come over the sea. He's the king, the monarch over the sea, the king over the waters. Who comes over the sea in the Chronicles of Narnia? Who always comes over the sea? It's actually Aslan, right? If you remember, Prince Caspian, the evil Telmarines have kept people away from the water because they're afraid, because they always know that Aslan comes over the waters, right? The king over the waters, by the way, is also a name for. You ever heard of Bonnie Prince Charlie? He was the true heir to James III, the sort of Catholic king of England that many are still waiting for, the true king to return, right? And one of my friends, Joseph Pierce, who's a really good writer, he's a convert to Catholicism, he told me that the people that are waiting for the king over the water, right? It was almost a fairy tale. It's like 300 years ago, right? The last of the stewards. But he was telling me they have a secret way of doing it, right? So if they're hailing, if they're like raising their toast to the Queen Elizabeth, he says what they do is they make sure that there's a glass of water on the table, and when they clink glasses to the Queen, they're doing it over the water glass, because it's a symbol of saying they're really looking for the king over the water. And he said, apparently this is a real thing, like in England and Ireland, places like that. I think it was kind of funny. The king over the water. But again, this is the one that's coming. And you've seen that probably in Norse mythology, those helmets that have the little wings on the side. This is what we're talking about here. Right? One of those is actually described in The Horse and His Boy. And these were the words that Elendil spoke when he came in, and he says it, et iarello, and you see that? I'm pretty sure that's what Viggo Mortensen sings in the movie. Remember when he's crowned, he suddenly starts singing and it looks kind of weird. Do you remember that in the movie? I think he's singing that line, but they don't give you any subtitles. But those were the words that Elendil spoke when he came up out of the sea and the wings of the wind. Out of the great sea to Middle Earth I am come. In this place will I abide, and my heirs unto the ending of the world. Out of the sea. Arthur sometimes comes over the sea. We'll show the Lady of the Lake who comes out of the Reich and gives Excalibur, all of his imagery. He says, Then to the wonder of many, Aragorn did not put the crown upon his head, but gave it back to Faramir, and said, By the labor and valor of many I have come into my inheritance. In token of this, I would have the ring-bearer, Frodo, bring the crown to me, and let Mithrandir, Gandalf, set it upon my head, if he will. For he has been the mover of all that has been accomplished, and this is his victory. Then Frodo came forward and took the crown from Faramir, and bore it to Gandalf. And Aragorn knelt, and Gandalf set the white crown upon his head, and said, Now come the days of the king, and may they be blessed, while the thrones of the Valar endure. This beautiful ceremony. Who was crowned in the old St. Paul's on Christmas Day 800? Anybody know? Does Martha know? Anybody know who was crowned by the then Pope? Say it? You got it, Charlemagne, okay? That was 800. So and by the way, if you look at the map of Middle Earth, and you look at where the Shire is, because the Shire really is England, right? And if you kind of take your map and sort of go over and down, you could have Minas Tirith pretty much the same place as Rome in Italy. And remember, Middle Earth is Earth, so there are some letters that suggest that by Tolkien. So anyway, there he is being crowned, and this is extremely meaningful to me, by the way. I won't go into the whole strange story, but 5 summers ago, I ended up on a cruise with my son. There's too many stories going into there. It was a difficult time. But anyway, as the last night of the cruise, if you've ever been on a cruise, they're really awesome. And if you go to the back of the ship and look over, you see the giant wake of the ship, because the ships are huge, like 8 stories or something. And I remember as we stood there, and we talked, and then my son was 21, so I wanted to do something special, and I kind of got into my mode, and I announced who I was and my pedigree and all that sort of stuff. And I said I'm formally putting my blessing on Alex. It was this really cool thing. It's like midnight or something, and I ended by saying, "Now begin the days of Alex the man. May they be blessed." Because we both love that scene in the movie when Gandalf says that, and that was it. After he was a man, and I treated him differently after that too. And everybody needs that. Especially guys need that. They need a man to tell them, "You are now a man." The girls seem to be able to figure it out themselves, more or less. But the boy just never moves on unless... it doesn't have to be his father. It could be his grandfather. It's got to be somebody like a father. It's got to be a true mentor. Or it could be a pastor. But it's got to be a real male role model who actually says to him, "Now you're a man." Because sometimes guys just don't ever make that transition. They're like Peter Pan or whatever.
Hollywood doing that now.
What's that? Hollywood?
Hollywood.
Yeah. See, it's like crazy, right? But they need that. So this wonderful moment, this announcement of this. But when Aragorn arose, all that beheld him gazed in silence, for it seemed to them that he was revealed to them now for the first time. Messianic language. Tall as the sea kings of old, he stood above all that were near. Ancient of days he seemed, and yet in the flower of manhood, and wisdom sat upon his brow, and strength and healing were in his hands, and a light was about him. And then Faramir cried, "Behold the king!" Anybody ever heard the phrase ecce homo? That's Latin for behold the man. Who says behold the man? Ooh, come on, Bill, you gonna get that? Anybody? Amanda? Behold the man. Ecce homo. It's from the Bible. Oh, that's close. But behold the man. He said, behold the Lamb of God. But it's actually what Pilate says when Jesus is brought before him with the crown of thorns. Behold the man. Not fully knowing what he means. Okay, but the Latin for that is ecce homo. The phrase comes up a lot. But again, what did he just call him? Ancient of Days? Who's Ancient of Days? Yeah, wow. And the Ancient of Days, one of the Messianic prophecies in Daniel is when the Ancient of Days, who seems to be God the Father, and then one like a Son of Man comes before him, right? And that's, when Caiaphas says point blank to Jesus, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the living God?" He says, "I am." And then he doesn't stop. He says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds," which is exactly that image. And that's why Caiaphas really rips his cloak. He's like, "Whoa, you're telling me you're the Son of Man before the Ancient of Days, the equal to God?" Pretty wild stuff. But yeah, again, this is the Messianic Kings we've said so many times. He's come in. He's got the hands of a healer. And I want to show you what an incredible judge he is. Look at page 969. I mentioned this before, and this is Baragon. Remember? He is the one that saved Faramir in the Pyre of Denethor, but he had to kill some other Gondorians by doing that. And so what will the king say? And look what he says. It's the bottom of 969, top of 969, I mean. The king said, "Baragorn, by your sword blood was spilled in the hallows, where that is forbidden. Also you left your post without leave of lord or of captain. For these things of old, death was the penalty. Now therefore I must pronounce your doom." This is, any of you grew up with the late great planet Earth? This is the White Throne Judgment. It's a biblical passage, but especially if you're into premillennialism, they always talk about the White Throne Judgment, whatever. He says, "All penalty is remitted for your valor in battle, and still more because all that you did was for the love of the Lord Faramir. Nonetheless, you must leave the guard of the citadel, and you must go forth from the city of Minas Tirith. Now, there must be justice. You must leave. But watch. Then the blood left Baragon's face, and he was stricken in the heart and bowed his head. But the king said, "So it must be, for you are appointed to the White Company, the guard of Faramir, Prince of Ithilien, and you shall be its captain, and dwell in Emin Arnon in honor and peace, and in the service of him for whom you risked all to save him from death." And then Baragon, perceiving the mercy and justice of the king, was glad, and kneeling kissed his hand, and departed in joy and content. It's like just mind-boggling, the perfect justice of the king. Mingling justice, must leave, but I will give you, in a sense, something better. It's almost like saying, you guys can't go back to Eden, but I'm going to get you the New Jerusalem. Something better, right? But there's loss and there's gain. Oh my gosh. And Gandalf tells them on page 971, top of 971, and Gandalf said, "This is your realm, and the heart of the greater realm that shall be. The third age of the world is ended, and the new age is begun. And it is your task, Aragorn, to order its beginning and to preserve what may be preserved. For though much has been saved, much must now pass away, and the power of the three rings also is ended. And all the lands that you see and those that lie around them shall be dwellings of men, for the time comes of the dominion of men, and the elder kindred shall fade or depart." Right? Because this is the end of the third age, and the fourth age will be the age of men. "I know it well, dear friend, but I would still have your counsel. Not for long now. The third age was my age. I was the enemy of Sauron, and my work is finished. I shall go soon. The burden must lie now upon you and your kindred." "But I shall die. I am a mortal man, and though being what I am, and of the race of the West unmingled, I shall have life far longer than other men. Yet that is but a little while. And when those who are now in the wombs of women are born and have grown old, I too shall grow old. And who then shall govern Gondor, and those who look to this city as to their queen, if my desire be not granted? The tree in the court of the fountain is still withered and barren. When shall I see a sign that it will ever be otherwise? Behold, turn your face from the green world and look where all seems barren and cold." And there he sees it. A shoot, a sapling of the white tree that goes all the way back to the two trees, right, in Valinor. That line of the tree, the root of Jesse, but it's literally a tree. That's almost like a pun in Tolkien. This is the root, but it's literally a root, right? We've got the Messianic king, but the tree, this will be. And there it was. And we find it. And Gandalf, coming, looked at it and said, "Verily, this is a sapling of the line of Nimloth the Fair. And that was a seedling of Galathilion. And that a fruit of Telperion of many names, eldest of trees." Even the tree has a pedigree, right? It's got a genealogy, like in Homer or something. "Who shall say how it comes here in the appointed hour? But this is an ancient hollow. And ere the kings failed or the tree withered in the court, a fruit must have been set here. For it is said that, though the fruit of the tree comes seldom to ripeness, yet the life within may then lie sleeping through many long years, and none can foretell the time in which it will awake. Remember this, for if ever a fruit ripens, it should be planted, lest the line die out of the world. Here it is lain hidden on the mountain, even as the race of Elendil lay hidden in the wastes of the north. Yet the line of Nimloth is older far than your line, King Elisar." Then Aragorn laid his hand gently to the sapling, and lo, it seemed to hold only lightly to the earth, and it was removed without hurt. Hey, Marzi, did we read a story of somebody that plucks a bough? Not this year, but last year. Remember? What great hero. Yeah. Is that? Yeah, the Aeneid. Good. Remember? What does Aeneas pluck? Remember it? Good. You got exactly. What does he have to pluck and hold up to go through the underworld? It's the. Good. It's a plant. It's the golden bough. Remember? It's called the golden bough. And he plucks it. And Aeneas is a sort of messianic king who's going to lay the foundation for Rome. Isn't that cool? Right? Wow, wonderful stuff. all together. So he pulls it, right? The sign has been given, said Aragorn, and the day is not far off. And he set watchmen upon the hill. And then we were all waiting for this wedding, and it get rushed. I'm glad that the movie gave us a good wedding, right? But at the bottom of page 972, all of a sudden Arwen shows up. And Frodo, when he saw her come glimmering in the evening with stars in her brow and a sweet fragrance about her, was moved with great wonder. And he said to Gandalf, "At last I understand why we have waited." He's like, Aragorn said, "No, you have to stay. Something's coming." He didn't tell him. Now, the movie, I think, puts the coronation and the wedding right next to each other. But here they're separated by a little bit of time. He says, "At last I understand this is the ending. Now not day only shall be beloved, but night too shall be beautiful and blessed, and all its fear pass away." Then the king welcomed his guests, and they alighted, and Elrond surrendered the scepter, and laid the hand of his daughter in the hand of the king. And together they went up into the high city, and all the stars flowered in the sky. And Aragorn the king Elisar wedded Arwen Undomiel in the city of the kings upon the day of midsummer, and the tale of their long waiting and labors was come to fulfillment. Wonderful. But I want to see the whole wedding, right? Now, just so you know, if you turn just for a moment to page, it's page 1061. You just may want to underline this here. That may be the reason why we had to have the coronation before the wedding. It says on page 1061, just about a third of the way down, it says that this is something Elrond said. Elrond said, "My son, years come when hope will fade, and beyond them little is clear to me. And now a shadow lies between us. Maybe it has been appointed so that by my loss the kingship of men may be restored. Therefore, though I love you, I say to you, Arwen Undomiel shall not diminish her life's grace for less cause. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. To me, then, even our victory can bring only sorrow and parting." So it's like, you can't have my daughter until you're the king of all Middle-earth. That's pretty hard, right? One wonders if Elrond was holding the Texas shotgun from over his fireplace when he said that. What do you think? You have a daughter, Clinton?
Yes.
Are you going to be one of those super tough fathers if somebody comes to date your daughter? You have a gun or anything?
I already am.
You already are? Okay. I know you're going to be threatening. He's got his two lovely daughters. You're going to be threatening him? You see this? You see this? You see this sacred geometry? It's very good for wringing your neck. Does anybody remember one of the great moments I remember from my childhood is going to see Indiana Jones, the original Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you remember when they've got him caught and the Nazi walks in, the real ugly looking Nazi guy, and he's got that thing and he goes like this, turns it, and then he turns it into a hanger and hangs up his jacket. Don't you remember? You're all wondering what is this torture weapon he's going to use, and he hangs up his jacket. It's the funniest thing. Anyway. You're right. They did look like nunchucks. That's true. Anyway. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so much I want to. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. All right. We'll give you just touches here. There's just so much. There's so much to cover. It's all so beautiful and it's so sad, right? As they go. Look at this is something you mentioned in your paper, Bill. Very important. Page 974. Again, Arwen has given up her immortality to marry Aragorn. And look what she does. Talking about a wonderful Christ-like act. On the bottom of page 974, it says, "But the Queen Arwen said to Frodo, 'A gift I will give you, for I am the daughter of Elrond. I shall not go with him now when he departs to the havens, the Grey Havens. For mine is the choice of Luthien, and as she, so have I chosen, both the sweet and the bitter. But in my stead you shall go, ring-bearer, when the time comes, and if you then desire it. If your hurt grieves you still, and the memory of your burden is heavy, then you may pass into the west until all your wounds and weariness are healed. But wear this now in memory of Elfstone and Evenstar, with whom your life has been woven.'" She gives her spot on the ship. By the way, there's a little bit of a suggestion that maybe Frodo's not going to become an elf per se, but once he is fully healed, maybe he will then come back and die and go to heaven. They never quite say. But there are some suggestions that he is just going until all of his wounds are... Like, by the way, who is sleeping? He's not dead, he's sleeping until we need him to return and save the day. You know what that is? It's on an island called Avalon. Who's sleeping at Avalon? Somebody knows. Come on. That's King Arthur, right? He's not dead, he's sleeping. That's why he's called the once and future king. When the world needs him, Arthur will return. Wonderful stuff. Modern, what's that? Father Time, and we first see him in Silver Chair, but then he wakes up in the last battle. That's true. That is old Father Time. He will sleep here until the end. Many fall down and few return to the sunlit. Good stuff. Anyway, whew. Okay. I love this. By the way, if there's ever a girl that loves you and you cannot return her love, this is one of my favorite lines of Aragorn, page 977. Very bottom of the page. Eowyn says to him, then Eowyn looked in the eyes of Aragorn and said, wish me joy, my liege lord and healer. And he answered, I have wished thee joy ever since I first saw thee. It heals my heart to see thee now in bliss. I just love that. That's the ultimate gentlemanliness. There's so many things. Okay, they go and they see Treebeard, and what has Treebeard done that upsets Gandalf a bit? You understand what Treebeard is allowed to happen? He lets somebody go. Yeah, he lets Saruman and Wormtongue go. And of course, Gandalf's upset, but then Gandalf meets him in the woods like 5 minutes later, and he lets him go. So nobody wants to do anything, right? But Treebeard, I hate to see a thing caged, Gandalf. You know that, right? He was harmless by then. Well, maybe he's still in his voice. He sweet-talked you. But anyway, he left, right? And then on page 981, look what Treebeard says. See if anybody recognizes these words. Very middle of page 3. Then Treebeard said farewell to each of them. Boom. Then he said, it is long, long since we met by stock or by stone. Vanimer vanemalion nostari, he said. It is sad that we should meet only thus at the ending, for the world is changing. I feel it in the water, I feel it in the earth, and I smell it in the air. Recognize those lines? Where do we hear those lines, Ellie? That's the opening lines of the movie, in the prologue. Galadriel speaks them. It says, what a cool idea they came up with to take that, move it over there, and it really works, right? It's changing. I feel it. I do not think we shall meet again. And Celeborn said, I do not know, eldest, not in Middle-earth, nor until the lands that lie under the wave are lifted up again. Then in the willow meads of Tessarinan we may meet in the spring. Again, apocalyptic energy. One of my favorite apocalyptic images in the Bible is, and then the sea shall give up its dead. The sea shall give up its dead. Whew. Man, good stuff. Then they meet Saruman, and they still don't do anything to stop him, right? And he is the most ungrateful wretch of all time. They try to help Saruman, he just spits on him, he kicks him, off they go, right? Then they go back and they meet with Bilbo, and Bilbo, like in the movie, asks, whatever became of my ring? I have lost it, Bilbo dear. This may be one of the few great books where the quest is not to go and find something, but to go and lose something. Isn't that amazing? Just think about it, right? At the end of the quest is not the finding of a treasure, but the giving up of a treasure. It's just, I don't know, wow. I guess in some ways that was Christ's quest, to come into the world, to give his life, right? Amazing. That pearl. Oh. Look at page 989. On the anniversary of what does Frodo feel great pain and sorrow? Well, actually, we'll find out. There's many. Look what it says on page the top page 989. He says, there are some wounds that cannot be wholly cured. I fear it may be so with mine. There is no real going back. Though I may come to the Shire, it will not seem the same, for I shall not be the same. I am wounded with knife, sting, and tooth. Can we identify those? When was he wounded with knife? That's it? Here, wait. No, this is Frodo speaking. When was Frodo injured with a knife? On Weathertop, good. And in the first part, when the Witch King stabs him, what about the sting? You know what that's a reference to? That's the spider Shelob, okay, because it's sting. And then the tooth, that's Gollum biting off his finger, right? But by putting them together, knife, sting, and tooth, what's messianic about that? Some people even, this is more of a Catholic thing, the Protestant thing, might even meditate on the what of Christ. You got it, that's the right word, the stigmata, the wounds of Christ. There's 5, right? 1, 2, the 2 in the feet and the side, right? The stigmata or the wounds of Christ. Has that ever come into anybody's art? Have you ever used a stigmata in art? Interesting. Do you know what famous saint apparently manifested the stigmata? His hands began to bleed? That was said of St. Francis of Assisi. It's actually been said of others, but the St. Francis of Assisi manifested the wounds, which is kind of odd. The stigmata. Okay, let's see. I'm going to keep going here. Oh, boy. There is one thing that may be sad, and that is on page 995. The movie didn't take us back to Bree so we could see the shocked look on the face of who? Parliament Butterbur. I just love it. You know, the king. What king? Because it's so much fun. They're telling him about the king, how he loves the Shire, right? He says, very top of 984. Well, first of all, okay. First of all, what does Barlaam Butterbur start to learn to respect that he didn't respect before? Yeah, okay. Look at that. I'll just show you 993 because I think it's pretty important. Towards the top of the page. How long will that be, said Butterbur. I'll not deny we should be glad to have you about for a bit. You see, we're not used to such troubles, and, well, the Rangers have all gone away, folk tell me. I don't think we've rightly understood till now what they did for us. Okay? But Gandalf says, don't worry, better times are coming for Bree. There is a king now, and soon he will be turning his glance this way. And it's as if, just by turning his eye, the Messianic king will clean up the roads and make everything safe again. Just like in Greek mythology, Hercules and Theseus were both famous for cleaning up the roads. What Anglo-Saxon hero actually cleaned up the seas of monsters? You know? He not only wrestles monsters on land, he even wrestles monsters in the ocean. If you read Beowulf carefully, you'll find out that Beowulf has actually cleaned things up, allowing trade and movement and life and all that. And then at the top of page 964, he says, he will, said Gandalf, he knows it and loves it. He loves Bree. Does he now? Though I'm sure I don't know why he should, sitting in his big chair up in his great castle hundreds of miles away. And then Sam is trying to, and then finally he says, he's Strider, the chief of the Rangers. Haven't you got that into your head yet? It went in at last. And Butterbur's face was a study in wonder. The eyes in his broad face grew round and his mouth opened wide, and he gasped, Strider? Him with a crown and all and a golden cup? Well, what are we coming to? Better times for Bree at any rate. It's just wonderful. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but this last part of the book literally retraces their step backward. I mean, it's like almost fun. It's like going backward bit by bit to everything. My Bill, right? Oh gosh, there's so much good stuff. You know what? There is one thing I want to show you. This, like I said, the beauty of this is just. Look for a second at page 985. I gotta at least show you that. There's so much to do, but you think this book is over, and it is over, but just the way that Tolkien lingers over it, and that melancholy sense of what's going away. The power of the three rings is also flowing. But just look at this wonderful image. Okay, while the hobbits are sleeping, Gandalf and the elves are up late at night speaking, right? Because soon they will all be leaving. But just look at this image on page 985. It's so beautiful. Okay, it says, it's just not too, about a third of the way down. It says, often, long after the hobbits were wrapped in sleep, they, Gandalf and the elves, they would sit together under the stars, recalling the ages that were gone, and all their joys and labors in the world, or holding counsel concerning the days to come. If any wonder had chanced to pass, little would he have seen or heard, and it would have seemed to him only that he saw gray figures carved in stone, memorials of forgotten things, now lost in unpeopled lands. For they did not move or speak with mouth, looking from mind to mind, and only their shining eyes stirred and kindled as their thoughts went to and fro. Now we today would call that mental telepathy, right? They're talking. But, I don't know, do any of you, remember, I don't know, when you were a kid maybe and you overheard your parents, or even better, your grandparents, talking about the good old days and being nostalgic? You ever remember that? Overhearing that? This is something, of course, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be the nostalgic one, right? My kids can listen to me, but even now, listen to my parents, who are about 80 now, just listening to them, remembering, and it's like something so long gone, right? Like it's like made out of something. There's just something beautiful and wonderful about all of it. Oh my gosh. Okay, now, they're homeward bound, right? And look at page 996. This is the end of the chapter, Homeward Bound. And they're starting to hear rumblings about there being problems in the Shire, right? And the hobbits are hoping that Gandalf will come with them. Look what Gandalf says. This is towards the top of page 996. Well, we've got you with us, said Merry, so things will soon be cleared up. And Gandalf says, I am with you at present, but soon I shall not be. I am not coming to the Shire. You must settle its affairs yourselves. That is what you have been trained for. Do you not yet understand? My time is over. It is no longer my task to set things to rights, nor to help folk to do so. And as for you, my dear friends, you will need no help. You are grown up now, grown indeed very high. Among the great you are. And I have no longer any fear at all for any of you. He is a true mentor, Gandalf. Right? A true mentor will help train you and then let you go and move on. And again, they're going to go. And Lotho, that fool, okay, Lobelia and Lotho, right? And they've allowed, basically, they've become filthy capitalists in the worst sense of the word, right? They've allowed trade to come in, and what they see when they come back to the Shire. Anybody ever heard the phrase urban sprawl? That phrase, I don't know if you still use it. I mean, it is this beautiful Shire, which is, remember I told you that Tolkien lived for a few years in Sarehole, right? And when he went back, he just disappeared. Oh, there she is. Amanda just disappeared. I was looking, and all I saw was a hat for a second. Pretty funny. Does that happen like when you're driving the car? People are like, all I see is a hat. What's going on there? It's pretty funny. I love that, man. It's good stuff. Anyway, stand up! I am standing. No, anyway. Ellie Marie. I just saw your name. That's your full name. Marie is your middle name, huh? Or that's pretty cool. Marie or Mary? Or Marie. If we want to sound Southern, we should call you Ellie Mae. That would sound very Southern. That's I'm just thinking, Ellie Mae. What is that? Is that the Beverly Hillbillies or something? Where there's an Ellie Mae in one of those, or is it the other one, the Dukes of Hazzard, or is it? I think it is Beverly Hillbillies, right? The Ellie Mae. Ellie Mae. Well, it's really a mixture of totalitarianism on both sides. In one sense, it's sort of communism. On the other side, it's a kind of not capitalism like free market capitalism, but a kind of acquisitiveness that just sucks everything up, like crony capitalism, like they have in Brazil, not Brazil, I mean Argentina. That's what I was saying. That's one of the reasons why the current Pope, has been very suspicious of capitalism, because he's from Argentina under, what are those people called? The Perones. It was completely crony which is what we're moving towards right now. Like when all these, multinational corporations are controlling, that's what they call an oligarchy. That's what he's. So he's not against capitalism. What Tolkien is for more than anything is free market trade and private property. But everybody needs some private property. Not one person owning everything, but everybody needs some small plot of land. And that's when it's better, right? That's when it's better. And I was saying this to Bill the other day. You know, how many of you have a house? You have a house? Did you notice how your perspective in life becomes different when you have a house? rather than living in an apartment or something, when it's like your house and you're responsible for it, it generally has a change on you, whether you even realize it. Usually a change for good, right? And that's what always bothers me. If you drive around a neighborhood where the houses are rented and the people just let them fall apart. It's like, come on, you need to take, now again, you're not going to invest all this money because it's not yours, but at least take care of it, okay? But that's what happens sometimes when it's not yours. So he was for home ownership, but not one person owning the whole place. And actually, the best example of what happens to the Shire, how many of you have seen It's a Wonderful Life? A few of you? Oh, good, okay. But It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey finds out what would have happened if he'd never been born. And what would have happened is the evil Mr. Potter would have taken over everything, and we get to see the dark side of Bedford Falls. Suddenly, the beautiful movie theater is like girly shows or something like that, and everything is what do you call it? Bars and pawn shops everywhere. Right? That's when you know a city's going bad. When it's all pawn shops and real bars, not like a pub where like people can actually go and drink and have fellowship, but just a low bar, and where people just go to get drunk and that's it. And we get to see the nightmare vision of what Bedford Falls might have become if he wasn't there. He inherited from his father a savings and loan, just a small little outfit, but it allows people to buy homes and have lives and not all have to live in Potter slums that he's built and stuff like that. It's amazing. And that's what I get when I come back. And it's so bad. What does Sam say? This is Mordor, but it's worse than Mordor because it's come home to you. Right? How easy it is for your place to be ruined. And notice what Tolkien hates? There's rules everywhere. Right? Know this. And notice the rules are, in one sense, you might call them totalitarian, but in another sense, they're like overly Puritan. No, you can't even drink. You can't do anything, right? It's like a kind of legalism that's from both sides coming in. All of it is crushing all the joy that's there. And everything's gone, right? Everybody's ruffians and things like that. Everything is forbidden. Nothing is allowed. Everything is growing up ugly. The Bagshot Row, which used to be a bunch of beautiful little homes, is now what we would call sort of a low-down tenement house that's falling apart and things like that. Look what happens, right? Oh my gosh. But don't worry. On page 1005, they find out Lotho's in charge, but not really. There's somebody above him named Sharkey, a real chief, who's using him as a figurehead, we're starting to realize, right? It says, "Yes, I see," said Frodo, about a third of the way down. "I see," said Frodo. "For one thing, I see that you're behind the times and the news here. Much has happened since you left the south. Your day is over, and all other ruffians. The Dark Tower has fallen, and there is a king in Gondor. And Isengard has been destroyed, and your precious master is a beggar in the wilderness." He doesn't know that Sharkey is Saruman, as we'll find out later. "I passed him on the road. The king's messengers will ride up the greenway now, not bullies from Isengard." Right? The man stared at him. "A beggar in the wilderness? Is he indeed? Swagger it, my little cock-a-whoop. But that won't stop us living in this fat little country where you have lays long enough. And that, king's messenger for you." Right? And again, they are sucking it. And again, they're using wonderful communist things like, we're gathering together communal food. What they're doing is stealing it for themselves, right? What is it? Some animals are more equal than others. You've seen Red Animal Farm? Yeah, but what I'm getting, it's kind of a totalitarianism from both sides here. All of it that we see after World War II, right? An outbreak of this after World War II. "I am messenger of the king," he said. Yeah, this is Pippin. "You are speaking to the king's friend and one of the most renowned in all the lands of the West. You are a ruffian and a fool. Down on your knees in the road and ask pardon, or I will see this troll's bane in you." That's a kenning, by the way. Troll's bane. This is a sword that caused death to a troll. So it's my troll's bane, right? It's one of those kennings. Now, one of the most interesting things in the end of Lord of the Rings is, by the end of this book, this is not an exaggeration to say that Frodo has become almost a total pacifist, which is interesting. Tolkien himself was not a pacifist. He wasn't a hawk, but he wasn't exactly a pacifist. But Frodo has gotten to the point where I don't want anybody killed. Even if there are hobbits that have literally gone over to the enemy, not interfere, I don't want any killing, right? But of course he also needs a little bit of help from Merry and Pippin. But it's interesting to see that he forsakes the sword completely. And Wouldn't it be nice if it really worked in life like that, where the bad guys just killed each other? Wouldn't it be nice? Okay, but anyway, it is interesting. I mean, I think you could debate whether they're too soft on Saruman or whatever. But anyway, but he doesn't want to fight anymore. No more of that, right? Let me go ahead and just get a few passages. Oh, good. Interesting. And in some ways, who is Frodo sounding like at the end? That he learns from in the beginning. What you're saying, the one who's trying to teach him, it was pity that stayed his hand. He's starting to sound like Gandalf in that sense. But like I said, you could also say that Gandalf's weakness is that is he too fast to forgive? It's hard to say. It is odd because they forgive Saruman so many times, right? Were you frustrated by it, Bill? What did you think? Because Saruman, almost destroys the Shire. Well, he does destroy it, but they rebuild it.
The frustration for me came when he didn't kill him in the forest.
Yeah.
Like, why would you look? But, I was thinking just when you were lecturing a minute ago, like, Gandalf said you've got to straighten out the Shire yourselves. And maybe he's allowing that, like, providentially.
Oh, probably. Okay, right.
Apply what they knew to, solving the problems back home. They went out and experienced the world, go back home, and it's almost the reverse of what Jordan Peterson would say. It's like, agree with Mingo. But they actually went out to the world and got things together, then came back and cleaned up their rings.
Interesting. That's a good way to put it. That'd be an interesting essay itself. You've learned the skills, and now you'll really recognize your home and be able to take care of it. But you couldn't do it while you were here. You had to see the wide world.
Samwise went out to the world, who left the garden and became the mayor.
Yeah, and he does. And by the way, Don Quixote is always promising Sancho Panza that he'll be a mayor, right? And so that's almost surely a kind of a funny reference to that. He's going to be a mayor of an island or something. He keeps telling him, a governor of an island. But here he's the mayor. So yeah, he does grow up in that sense, right? It's just. By the way, when Stacy graduated, her teacher, her maestro, is David Kirkwood. And after when Stacy was graduating, I went up to Kirkwood and I said, "Well, did my daughter give satisfaction?" Quoting this because he also loves Lord of the Rings. Right? He said, that's the gaffer. Did my son give satisfaction? That's on page 1014. I love that. We get to meet a little bit of Rosie Cotton and her father, Farmer Cotton, very, very brave. He says, "Well, you can't say fairer than that," said the gaffer. "Mr. Frodo Baggins is a real gentle hobbit. I always have said, whatever you may think of some others of the name, begging your pardon, and I hope my Sam's behave himself and given satisfaction. Perfect satisfaction, Mr. Gamgee. Indeed, if you will believe it, he's now one of the most famous people in all the lands, and they are making songs about his deeds from here to the sea and beyond the great river." Sam blushed, but he looked gratefully at Frodo, for Rosie's eyes were shining, and she was smiling at him. "Takes a lot of believing," said the gaffer, "though I can't see he's been mixing in strange company." The gaffer's tough on him, man. He's always tough on him. The old gaffer. Then, what? I guess he does keep mumble, but he's always, he said, "Oh, my gaffer's right. I'm no good for nothing," right? And they have their big fight. Again, just the horror of what's happened. And the worst of all is they've not only messed up Bagshot Row and dug up the trees. What did they cut down? Did you understand what they cut down? Yeah, right. That's what they call the party tree on page 1016, 1017, where it all began. They even cut down the party tree. Right? And again, that's when he says this is worse than Mordor. Right? Then again, Saruman shows up, and what are they going to do? They want to kill him, and then Saruman puts a curse. If you kill me here, my blood will wither this place. And he's probably right. And remember, we got to remember that Saruman is not just a bad guy. He is ultimately an angelic being. He's a kind of an angel or archangel. He's an Istari, a wizard. And again, he will not allow them. Frodo will not allow them to kill him. He says, this is page 1019, about a third of the way down. Frodo said, "Do not believe him. He has lost all power save his voice that can still daunt you and deceive you if you let it. But I will not have him slain. It is useless to meet revenge with revenge. It will heal nothing. Go, Saruman, by the speediest way. Worm, come!" But as Saruman passes by Frodo, he tries to stab him. But the mithril coat saves him again, right? And then, of course, everybody wants to kill Saruman again, but Frodo still says, on 10:19, "No, Sam, do not kill him even now, for he has not hurt me. In any case, I do not wish him to be slain in this evil mood. He was great once, of a noble kind that we should not dare to raise our hands against. He has fallen, and his cure is beyond us, but I would still spare him in the hope that he may find it." There was a strange look in the eyes of Saruman, mingled wonder and respect and hatred. "You have grown, halfling. Yes, you have grown very much. You are wise and cruel. You have robbed my revenge of sweetness, and now I must go hence in bitterness, in debt to your mercy. I hate it, and you." But then Frodo says, "Wormtongue, you don't need to follow him. Stay with us." And then Saruman does one of the cruelest things. "What? You want Wormtongue to stay amongst you?" And then he tells that Wormtongue killed Frodo. Frodo killed Lotho. He killed the thing. And then, of course, now that what that means is that the Shire people won't let him live there after that. And then Saruman laughed. "You do what Sharky says always, don't you, Worm? Well, now he says follow." He kicked Wormtongue in the face as he groveled and turned and made off. But at that, something snapped. Suddenly Wormtongue rose up, drawing a hidden knife, and then with a snarl like a dog, he sprang on Saruman's back, jerked his head back, cut his throat, and with a yell ran off down the lane. Before Frodo could recover or speak a word, 3 hobbit bows twanged, and Wormtongue fell dead. So brilliant of the movie. In the extended version, this exact scene is moved to the top of Orthanc. Because in the original theatrical, we never hear from Saruman again. The last time we see him, he's imprisoned in Orthanc, and then he disappears. But in the extended, the same thing happens on there. Wormtongue kills him, and then they shoot Wormtongue. I think it's actually Legolas that shoots Wormtongue in the movie. But anyway, now watch what happens. To the dismay of those that stood by, about the body of Saruman a great mist gathered, and rising slowly to a great height, like smoke from a fire, as a pale shrouded figure it loomed over the hill. For a moment it wavered, looking to the west, but out of the west came a cold wind, and it bent away, and with a sigh dissolved into nothing. That's exactly what happens to Sauron and what happens to the Witch King. It's both described of them. What does that mean? You're yearning towards the west because you want to, let me go back to Valinor. No, buddy, you're done. Whoosh, and they're gone. Right? They're consumed by their evil. I've been reading some of your paper, and you talked about that well, Marcy. A few more things. Oh, gosh, so beautiful. And then they think we'll never be able to grow things back again. It will never be like, and then he remembers Galadriel's gift, the little box of enchanted soil with the seed. And so on page 1023, they put just grain by grain, they put it at the root of everything, and then where the party tree was, they plant the Malorn seed. Right? And it grows to be, look at this. Page 1023, it says, right after the space break, spring surpassed his wildest hopes. His trees began to sprout and grow as if time was in a hurry, and wished to make 1 year do for 20. In the party field, a beautiful young sapling leapt up. It had silver bark and long leaves, and burst into golden flowers in April. It was indeed a Malorn, and it was the wonder of the neighborhood. And after years, as it grew in grace and beauty, it was known far and wide, and people would come long journeys to see it. The only Malorn west of the mountains and east of the sea, and one of the finest in the world. Altogether, 1420 in the Shire was a marvelous year. Not only was there wonderful sunshine and delicious rain in due times and perfect measure, but there seemed something more, an air of richness and growth, and a gleam of a beauty beyond that of mortal summers that flicker and pass upon this Middle Earth. He doesn't use the phrase Middle Earth that much. He saves it for that moment. God. All the children born and begotten in that year, and there were many, were fair to see and strong, and most of them had rich golden hair that had before been rare among hobbits. The fruit was so plentiful that young hobbits very nearly bathed in strawberries and cream, and later they sat on the lawns under the plum trees and ate until they had made piles of stones. Stone is what you call the giant seed in the center of a thing, like in a guacamole, like in an avocado. That's a stone, like in the middle of a peach. They made piles of stones like little small pyramids or the heaped skulls of a conqueror. And then they moved on. And no one was ill. And everyone was pleased except those who had to mow the grass. Wonderful line. This is a wonderful little thing. And then Sam and Rosie get married and they move into Bag End. And nobody has ever been taken care of better than Frodo is, having both of them there to take care of him, right? But notice one little thing on page 1025. Middle of the page. All things now went well, with hope always of becoming still better, and Sam was as busy and as full of delight as even a hobbit could wish. Nothing for him marred that whole year except for some vague anxiety about his master. Frodo dropped quietly out of all the doings of the Shire, and Sam was pained to notice how little honor he had in his own country. Can you please identify the allusion? Yeah. And where did Jesus not get honor? When he went to visit? His hometown of Nazareth. And what could he not do in Nazareth? He couldn't even do miracles because of their lack of faith. He was amazed by their unbelief. He couldn't do anything. So a prophet is without honor. So another messianic link to Frodo, right? And then he's making the book, and he says, "This will be my final line to my son when I'm dying on my deathbed, which hopefully will be a while away. And I will. This is the new day, so I'll hand him the thumb drive, and I'll say, the last pages are for you, Alex, and he'll know what to do, right? The last pages are for you. And then we get the final song on page 1028. The final what's the word I want? The final iteration of the song we've heard again and again at the top of the page. Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate, and though I oft have passed them by, a time will come at last when I shall take the hidden paths that run west of the moon, east of the sun. That the final adventure, going off, finding that secret gate, just so beautiful. And they go, and let us end here, page 1029. And again, the movie does it so well. I didn't think I'd make it. Let's do the end here. So, again, Sam has to realize that Frodo's not coming back. He's going to get on the ship from the Grey Havens and go off to Valinor, along with Galadriel and Gandalf and Elrond. And he says, "Can I come with you?" And he says, "No, Sam," top of the page, "not yet anyway, not further than the Havens. Though you too were a ring-bearer, if only for a little while. Your time may come. Do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot always be torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years." That's in the movie. "You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do." We hear that voiceover as he goes back. But I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire too for years and years after all you have done." "So I thought too once, but I have been too deeply hurt, Sam." And then the line, which luckily was saved in the movie, "I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me." It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. Again, such a powerful, Christ figure that Frodo is. He saved it, but it's not for him. It's not for him to enjoy. And is that not what Abraham did? It wasn't for him to enjoy, but his ancestors. "But you are my heir. All that I had and might have had, I leave to you. And also you have Rose and Eleanor," and he goes on all the wonderful things, right? He says, and towards the bottom he says, "You will be the mayor, of course, as long as you want to be, and the most famous gardener in history. And you will read things out of the Red Book and keep alive the memory of the age that is gone, so that people will remember the great danger and so love their beloved land all the more. And that will keep you as busy and as happy as anyone can be, as long as your part of the story goes on." You'll tell the stories of the great generation. You will tell those stories. And then on the next page, 1030, Gandalf says farewell, and he says, "Yes," said Gandalf. Gandalf very kindly tells Merry and Pippin to come so that Sam won't have to go home alone. That's what he's done. So he won't be sad. And so he says to him, "Yes," said Gandalf, "for it will be better to ride back 3 together than 1 alone. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are in evil. Then Frodo kissed Merry and Pippin, and last of all Sam, and went aboard, and the sails were drawn up, and the wind blew, and slowly the ship slipped away down the long grey firth, and the light of the glass of Galadriel that Frodo bore glimmered and was lost. And the ship went out into the high sea, and passed on into the west, until at last, on a night of rain, Frodo smelled the sweet fragrance on the air, and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that, as in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the grey rain curtain turned all to silver glass, and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country, under a swift sunrise. And I don't know if you noticed what the movie did, but when Frodo sailed off into the west, normally in a movie when you transition, you have what's called fade to black. Like it goes to black and then you come. But what they did there is it was fade to white. It's like he went into the sun and it all turned white. And then we come back and we see Sam going back home. And then we hear the voice saying, you have to be whole. And they kept the last line. Well, I'm back. My dear artists, right? We have come to the shores of the sea, right? The end of our fellowship. But you will come back and visit. If nothing else, you're going to come back and heckle poor Chris. You're going to come back and invade my class in the fall and stuff like that. And we are all really looking forward to these artworks. You guys got ready for next week? It's going to be good stuff. And remember, again, be thinking if we want to do a potluck, it would be 2 weeks from today, maybe 6 o'clock. And will you have a smoker? Maybe we'll have some meat. I don't know. He brought a smoker over there, so we will have good food. And, of course, you can bring your significant others and stuff. You're going to meet them. In fact, if you want to bring... Good. Hopefully, we'll try to get some time. Yeah, we'll get them there. And maybe you can bring the girls there. Anthony, you can bring the girls. They can dance around. Get the big deck there.
You don't want to see them on a school night.
Oh, are they wild? Oh, that's true. It will be a school night. I'm not thinking about that. Are they wired?